regarded as the privileged site of like consciousness or of like ontology. Why do you think that is? Because that's not what materialism is. That's what I'm arguing against.
Well, I'm arguing against what I thought was his position in terms of Leninism that Lenin outlines in chapter 4 of materialism and empirical criticism.
Well, I'm talking about like materialism as a metaphysical concept. Like, yeah,
right, yeah.
I'm not talking about Lenin.
Well, but the original debate that the guy that was in here was arguing the Leninist position. So that's what I'm concerned with, is that why are we supposed to believe that that is true?
Believe what? What did Lenin say? What's the quote?
Just that basic chapter 4 is about there is objective truth. It's not pure subjectivity, but that objective truth is just objective matter and sensation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, but why is that true? How are we supposed to know that's true?
I think you're getting it misconstrued with this kind of vulgar materialism that it's like something I can...
No, I'm reading chapter 4.
Yeah, I'm explaining what I'm saying. I'm saying, I think you take that quote and you're saying, okay, what is it out there? I can't feel it, I can't touch it. But it's like,
No, I want to know the argument for why materialism is true.
Because the subject is not the privileged site of ontology of being. So subjectivity is not the...
How does that prove materialism?
Because that means the world acts upon us. It means the world is real. It means the world is material.
How does it prove that?
Because you are being acted upon. When you are born into the world, you are a finite being. You are a finite being.
How does that answer something like Sellers' myth of the given?
Explain that.
Well, wait a minute. You're the philosopher here, so you don't know.
I didn't say I was a philosopher. When did I say that?
No, you're the philosopher here explaining materialism to us, so surely you would be familiar with the major objections to materialism.
What is that objection? Lay it out. If you're the smart guy, condense it. Say it to me.
But I'm not the materialist. I thought so you don't know the major objections to your position?
Well, offer one forward. You're not giving me. You're not presenting your case. Like, I've made mine.
Well, the myth of the given is the idea that the external data that comes in, that there's a correspondence or that there's a givenness or a pattern that exists, that the information that comes in matches up to the ideas in your head.
Yeah, but that necessarily can't be true. Like, an unconscious person can still be given information and they're not able to disclose that information in their head.
Okay,
like someone who doesn't have, like someone who hasn't learned language.
The argument.
Someone who hasn't learned language.
You're not even understanding the argument.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Okay, what am I not understanding about it?
It's an argument against materialism, because materialism operates on the assumption of the myth of the given, that the data that comes in is meaningful.
Yeah, it's just Kantian jibber jabber. I know. Yeah, I know what that means. But I'm saying
not Kantian.
It literally is. It's like
no, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Sellers is an empiricist. He's not a Kantian.
And what do you? Kant literally used a lot of Hume when he was making his arguments. Yeah, Kant didn't fully reject Hume.
I make transcendental arguments. I know. I'm a fan.
Okay. So my point is being that, and it can be interpreted as the Kantian negation of what is being said. I understand that your mind plays tricks on you. I understand what you're saying.
Well, that's part of it, but the argument is that there's an assumed correspondence between the idea that's produced from the sensations and the meaningful content in the external world. And how do you know that that's the case?
Exactly.
Because of vibes, man. This is what I'm talking about. You can't rationalize.
Because of vibes. Because of vibes.
I'm just going to jump into and just say that I don't know if you have some type of, if you're responding to some type of phenomenalism or something like that, but the fact of the matter is what you're saying about the subjectivity of consciousness certainly doesn't prove materialism, because you have all of Greek antiquity and Aristotelian philosophy that believes in immaterial entities, and real essentialism is being immaterial properties and substances.
Yeah, but because of vibes. Did you not hear the conclusion? The concluding argument was because of vibes, man.
Vibes, dude. Welcome, Catmilk.
Hey, what's up?
What's up?
Are you guys both talking from the same account?
No, I'm playing a clip.
Oh, okay. Yes, I just wanted to ask, how is Christianity objectively proven?
What the transcendental argument for God we would say is an objective proof, like a philosophical proof.
Can you give me that argument?
A real simple version of it would be like, if knowledge, then God. We have knowledge, therefore God exists.
How is that proof?
Because you can't deny knowledge, and if it's the case that like God's necessary for knowledge, then it will follow.
Why would God be necessary for knowledge?
Because I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Knowledge is going to require like uniformity of nature, and only humans have no way to epistemically justify the uniformity of nature, and so we need God's revelation to know that the uniformity of nature is true, and that's necessary for knowledge.
So, yeah, that doesn't really make sense, dude.
Sure, it does. Like when you're talking, there has to be some like order and consistency in the world that you can like form the same words with like air and your muscles.
Sure, yeah. That doesn't mean God has to exist, though.
Well, how would you explain the uniformity of nature? You wouldn't be able to without God.
Why not?
Because there's no rational proof for it and there's no empirical proof.
So, God. Great. Okay. I still don't see how that's proof of God.
Yeah. So when your model of reality makes knowledge impossible, that model of reality is a disaster. It's incoherent. It's a fail. And so when the Christian model of reality can make knowledge possible, then that has to be true.
So just to clarify, you're basically saying that because we know that plants do photosynthesis, God is real?
Yeah, any fact would be indirectly proof of God since he'd be necessary for all facts.
Okay, yeah. So again, I'm gonna ask you, why is God necessary for us to know things?
Well, I mean, I told you. So, uniformity of nature, and then there's also identity. Objects have to have an identity, so you can categorize and analyze them. And
Sure, yeah, but this isn't proof of God.
Sure, it is. How would you explain that object has an identity? Like, what would limit the properties of an object if it's not God?
Oh my god. Well, can you elaborate on that?
If an object has nothing that limits its properties, then there's no limit to the object's properties. And if there's no limit to an object's properties, then we can't identify the object. And so,
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and if we can't identify objects, we can't have knowledge. And since God is that which limits properties of objects, then God is necessary for knowledge.
All right, so I'm gonna ask for another clarification here. Are you saying that because doors cannot span an infinite amount of space, there is a God?
Yeah.
Okay, and further clarification, you're saying that because humans cannot see everything all at once, there is a God?
Sure. Because you make universal claims? How would you make a universal claim if you can't see everything?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm still struggling to understand how you think this is proof of a God.
Well, that God is necessary for proof. Like, I'm struggling. Do you have a coherent system to determine something's true or false? Because I would.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, what would that be?
Just basic knowledge, things that I've learned from other people, what I can observe around me.
Yeah, ultimately, in your model of reality, what was going to make something true or false? Like your brain?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, so that means there is no truth because you just arbitrarily decide what's true or false. So you need God.
So do you.
No, in my model of reality, God determines what's true or false, not me.
Hey, but dude, are you failing to realize like that you're not making an argument here?
Well, you seem to fail to realize that we have competing systems. I have a Christian system of truth, and you have a garbage system of truth. And so I'm
Well,
saying
I have what I can actually see and
you
experience
have
and
nothing.
have proof of as my system of proof.
You have nothing. You don't even have access to reality, so you can't make a claim about reality. You can't make any truth claim, any knowledge claim, any value claim because your system's broken. So you can't
Well,
debate.
let me ask you this. Let me ask you
Oh,
this.
okay.
Do you have a basis in reality? Because you seem to think
Yeah.
that things existing means that God is real.
Dude, when you're talking, you're using logic. How would you explain
Okay.
You couldn't explain logic in your model of reality. What would be like universal, concrete, and unchanging that could explain how there's logic?
Yeah, Nicholas, I can kind of tell there's no way this guy's being for real.
Uh-huh.
Or if he is, there's something wrong with him. But dude, I want to ask you this. How can you argue that there's objective proof of God when the whole point of Christianity is faith?
Um, how can you say A is B with no final reference point to predicate?
Okay, you didn't answer my
Yeah,
question. How
because
can you say
you're
there's
not
objective
understanding.
proof
I don't
of
know.
God?
You're talking. God is necessary for you to talk because when you talk, you're predicating. God being the final, ultimate reference point and predication. So when you must believe in God to talk, right? Because what else would be your reference point to predicate?
Okay, so you're not answering my question. Can you answer my question?
Yeah.
Welcome,
I
Mace.
I'm gonna be honest. I just straight up think that your argument is not like physically sound. Like what you're saying is that you need God to talk, but all you need
It's
is to
it
be
is
able to
physical.
physically open your mouth.
Incorrect.
Like so my confusion is where everything you're
Stop.
linking it back to
Stop.
is always just going,
What's
God
wrong
is the
with
reason you can do
you?
it.
What is
And I just want
wrong?
to ask about that.
What is wrong with you? Yeah, I'm saying God's necessary for you to even talk to me. God's necessary because there has to be a uniformity of nature, and you would have no way to justify the uniformity of nature, which you rely on to speak, without accepting God's revelation.
So you're saying that the justif like I'm trying to like make it make sense because it doesn't.
The evidence is you're talking. That's the evidence for God.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And why that is evidence for God is because for you to talk, there has to be uniformity of nature. And only the Christian model of reality can epistemically justify and metaphysically account for the uniformity of nature. Your model of reality can't even explain how you can talk. So your model of reality is ridiculous and clownish, and you should become a Christian.
Right. So what you're saying is complete nonsense because what you're saying is that God is creating the system of society that allows you to speak and how uniformity works, and you're throwing buzzwords at me to make it sound smart.
You're predicating, you're saying A is B, right? That's logic, right? So what is
You're claiming that it's cause and effect. So the cause being God, the effect is me talking, but that's not the case. The cause is that nature was made so that we would have vocal cords, we would have a mouth so that we could project sound waves through our mouth so that we can
not
get words across.
understanding?
That is how that works. And then that way
It's
we would be
going
able
over
to
your
communicate
head.
with each other.
No,
You,
no, no.
yeah, yeah.
You're just assuming that our concepts and the data that comes into our senses are aligned, that there's a correspondence. You have no way to
There's nothing to worry about with correspondence. It's fact. We have the biology, we have the textbooks
dude,
to
what are you
prove that
talking
that is why
about?
we talk.
Prove it. Prove it.
Prove what? I can tell my vocal cords are vibrating in my throat when I make noise. That is how we know. It is simply sound waves.
You're
It's not
presupposing
hard.
the uniformity of nature. So when you deny God, it leads to inconsistencies in the ability to account for logic, morality, or science. So
You're
only
saying you're saying that it fails to bring up logic, but your logic is entirely relying on discarding the facts that we already have, and then saying that the reason why we're able to talk is
yeah.
God. That is completely
You
disregarding
think,
logic.
how do you have a fact without God? What presupposition makes a fact
How do you have
true?
a fact with God?
Because God makes facts true. What makes facts true in your
Okay,
system?
show me where God made that fact. Show me where God said that you are able
God
to
is
talk.
ultimate. God is ultimate reality. So He dictates the state of affairs. And
You're
the
not
state
hearing me. Show me where it says that God created us to talk. Like, you can't explain that without showing me actual science on how the larynx opens up, the vocal cords vibrate, and how you make noise. That is how that works.
No, I'm not talking about science. I'm talking about metaphysics.
What are metaphysics? Because you're throwing buzzwords at me to sound
Metaphysics
smarter than you are.
is reality. Science just deals with how we perceive the world. It doesn't make any claims about
No,
reality.
science is fact.
Yeah, but science doesn't make claims about reality. So when we talk
If
about
science is
reality,
fact, then it is reality.
science does not make claims about reality. It makes claims about how we perceive the world, not about how the world actually is. So when we're talking about metaphysics, we're talking about reality as it actually is, not just our perception of it.
I'm gonna pull up the definition of science on my laptop, and we're gonna figure out what it actually means.
But I know what science is. Science is a study of the natural world, but
No, because you're so convinced. I'm gonna pull up an actual source.
Science doesn't make.
Since you're so convinced, right?
Science doesn't make metaphysical claims. It just makes claims about phenomena.
It's not phenomenon. It's tested theory. It's you see something happen, you test it until you realize what it is.
And again, that presupposes inductive reasoning, which means you have to justify the uniformity of nature for any scientific claim to have warrant.
You also have to justify an all-knowing being to be the reason why everything happened.
That's what I'm doing right now. I'm saying science is possible, yet if atheism were true, science would be impossible. And that only in Christian theism can we have a world where we can do science. So
is it impossible to say that both science and an all-knowing being can be both concurrent and existing?
That's what I'm saying, that God is necessary for science. You can't do science without the Christian.
You're not hearing it. You're saying that the reason why everything happens is God. What I'm saying is that God is the reason why science exists and that science is right. That is entirely the point. The point is that God created these things in your theory, right? In your theory, God created all these things to work, right? But the problem is that we have all the knowledge, we have all the data, we have all of the information about what actually happened in order for certain things to occur in nature. So what you're saying just doesn't make sense. You're saying that God created it when we have all the testing, theory, data, we have all of that to prove why this happens, and it's because cause and effect. It's not God, it's cause and effect.
Science can't even prove cause and effect. You have no idea what you're talking about. See, cause and effect again.
Prove cause and effect when science.
Cause and effect is metaphysics. That's metaphysics. Science doesn't deal with that. You don't know what you're talking about.
You're saying metaphysics because it's a buzzword and it makes you sound smart, but it means nothing. Also, science is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and nature.
Just ignoring what I'm saying. Okay. Welcome, Cyber.
Yo. Right, so let's start with what is it you're even saying about how God makes everything true? Just explain that to me for a second.
So a fact is like a state of affairs, or like something in the external world that would make a proposition or like a sentence true. And God dictates what is. Like he determines the state of affairs. So God makes facts true.
Okay, so what is a fact to you? Okay, explain that.
Okay, so if I have a sentence, the cat is on the mat. For
Yep.
that sentence to be true, there has to be in like an external world a state of affairs where there's a cat on a mat that it connects to the sentence.
Right, okay. What was it you were saying about vocal cords? Okay, let's go from there. I think that's a good place to start. What were you saying about how if we can speak, then God must be real? Can you explain that to me?
Sure, to talk, there has to be some consistency or like order, regularity to the natural world. Because if there was no order, every time you try to say a word, it might sound different. The reason that we can say words that sound the same is because there's order and consistency.
Okay, and how does that prove God?
Because in the world where God creates it and he endows the world with order, we have order and we have a reason to think there's order. But if you deny God, then you just say, well, there's order. Well, how do you explain it? You can't.
Okay, let me explain it to you. We can speak because we have vocal cords. These vocal cords vibrate, and then we use our mouths. We use our no. Listen to me. I heard you talk. Let me talk. we use our mouths to form words and syllables, correct? Now, we have that ability through years of evolution. The evolution came to place when cells came down from an asteroid onto the Earth long after the Big Bang and caused the Cambrian explosion, which is the first life on Earth that formed in the ocean. These creatures then started to develop, and they started leaving the ocean to go out and hunt and eat, and coming back to the ocean to lay eggs, until we evolved to lay eggs in that have water inside of them, so that we don't have to go back to the ocean, and we continue to evolve from there. That is how come we have all of these features as human beings, because of years, millions and millions of years of evolution. That is proven. Like, let's go with the appendix. It is proven. I can prove it right now. I can prove it right now. We have an appendix. The appendix. No, just listen to me, okay? I heard you out. Now you're going to hear me out.
You're just preaching some nonsense, though.
It's not nonsense, because I can back it up. If you allow me to back it up, I can back it up.
You cannot
So we
back it
have
up.
appendixes.
Who
Our
observed,
appendixes.
who observed any of the shit? Who observed any of this?
Listen, yeah, okay, and who observed God creating the earth? No
any
one.
of that crap?
Okay, so we
Not
have
science.
appendixes.
That's
These
creation
appendixes
mythology.
were made
That's
so we
just
could eat a certain type of food that we don't need to eat anymore. We don't need these appendixes anymore,
You
and a
must
lot
be
of people are
16
being born
years
without
old.
them.
You're
Same
acting
thing with
like-
our canine teeth. Not is it canine teeth? It's not canine teeth. Wisdom teeth.
Yeah, she's acting like a 16-year-old, so she must be 16. Not interested in like science creation. Okay.
You never observed God either. You can't say that people didn't observe like
Sure.
all that shit back then. You never observed like God and all that.
No, we have witness testimony. We have observed God.
Huh?
We observed
How?
God's
What?
invisible qualities, and we like people observed Jesus, and Jesus is God, so we did observe God. So you don't know what you're talking about.
You did not though. How do you believe though?
I don't have to. Did you observe a lot? Did you ever observe an electron?
No.
Yeah. Do you
'Cause
believe?
I don't have a
in-
microscope.
Yeah. So what? So someone else observes it.
But I could go out and observe electron.
You believe things other humans witness, and I believe other things other humans witness, and that's why I believe in Jesus.
You read a
who is
book.
Witnessed
You
and
read a
observed.
book.
Yeah.
You read a book.
Yeah. And if the book's not the authority,
But-
then what's the authority?
You know how many fiction books there are?
It's not a fiction book. It's the authoritative word of God.
You don't.
What's your
A
authority?
human wrote that. A human wrote that.
Yeah, and a human said a human.
It was seen from many different eyes.
Uh huh. So what's your authority?
Schizophrenia wasn't diagnosed back then. Like,
What's
it
your
could have been
authority?
a schizophrenic person.
What's your authority? If God's not the authority, the Bible's not the authority, then what's the authority to replace it?
People. Whoever's at the top.
See, that's the difference between you and me. You wanna serve another man. I want to serve God.
I don't want to serve another man. It's
But
just
that's
how
what
it
you
is.
said. You said another man is my authority. A human being.
I just said that's how it was. I didn't say that's what I want.
Well, I think humans are
I
trapped.
definitely prefer to not be like overlorded by anyone. Not God, not a book, not nothing.
Well, too bad. Tough titties. So the way the world works.
Exactly. I have to deal with it. I have to deal with these
Right.
people in real life.
So do you want to be a slave?
And not some fiction that you've made in your head.
So do you want to be a slave to a human, or do you want to be a slave to a?
I don't. I'm not a slave to a human. It's just that they make the laws.
That's your choice. This is your choice, dude.
I'm not
Why?
doing work for them.
Oh my God, you are. You are a slave. We're slaves. Okay. Now, do you want to be a slave to a human being, or do you want to be a slave to a god?
I'd rather be a slave to someone that's real than someone that I've made up in my head.
See, and me knowing how crappy humans are and how they treat people badly, I'm going to be a slave to God who loves us.
Okay.
That's my choice.
But you're still a slave to humans as well. It's like, would you rather be both or one? Do you want to be a slave times 2 or slave times 1?
I'm freed from the constraints of the human world because
You're not. You still have to follow the laws. You're not. You can't just go breaking laws because you're a Christian.
No, I've been freed in Christ. Sure, I have to submit to a human authority in a sense of punishment, But can they really punish me? Because when I die, I will be born to eternal life in paradise with my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So I
How
don't
do you know that's
agree
real?
because of the transcendental argument for God. It's impossible to deny. It's objectively proven. So
How is it objectively proven? How could
Christianity is necessary for knowledge. You can't deny knowledge. Therefore, the Christian God exists.
why is Christianity like necessary for knowledge?
Because
Why?
it's a system of truth. We need to say something's true. You have to have a system.
Okay, but if it is truth, then knowledge is needed before then. Before Christianity.
There is no before Christianity. Christianity starts at the Garden of Eden, when Adam and Eve are at one with God. They're in harmony, perfect harmony for God. And then they go, screw God. And that's why we're in the situation we are now. Why did they do that? What a bunch of jerks, right?
What? Oh
So,
my.
we need to learn not to love the world, and you turn to God. And that will set you free from human anxiety, the need to like fit in, social pressure. You don't have to listen to any human authority because you have a higher power that you serve. It's amazing.
That's not how that works. You still have to listen to the human authority.
Oh, that isn't how winners talk.
Huh? What does winners have to do with any of this? We're talking about religion.
Winners never give up, and they struggle through adversity. And when you get knocked down, you get back up. That's how you win.
So most laws are made with morals, like don't go stealing, don't go kicking babies. Like it's not just that they don't want you to do things, they're not like restraining you, at least in America, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so do you want to break laws? Do you want to go kick babies?
Well, sometimes there are laws that are evil.
Like what? I get that there is.
I can't really like think of anything off the top of my head, like currently. Like, obviously, laws in the past that we've changed, we know were evil. Like slavery is an obvious example.
Yeah, but that's not there anymore because we're civilized people for the most part.
No, it's because of God, right? Because we could say
no, because people decided to be like, that's not okay. Why are we doing this?
It was because of God. It was because
that was people. That wasn't God.
Yeah, but
God didn't reach out to somebody and say slavery is bad. Like he didn't reach out to the presidents of the time.
Yes, he did. If you look at the argument,
the people who didn't want to be slaves,
You're ignoring me.
who didn't want to be slaves, and
the
people who agreed with the people who don't want to be slaves because they have morals, they were like, I don't like this. Let's have no slaves.
You're underground railroading me. No,
that wasn't God. It was an underground.
If you go look at the arguments they made, they appealed to God. They said slavery is wrong
because they were Christians.
Yeah, so Christianity, we have to have a higher power, because if there was no higher power, there'd be no reason to say slavery was wrong.
If you ask me, I don't believe in a higher power, but I believe slavery is wrong because I have morals. Like, do you only have morals because you believe in God?
Your morals. You grew up in the West, so you have Christian morals. The reason you think that is because of Christianity. Whether you admit it.
No, I'm just not a terrible person. Most people don't like slavery, whether or not they grew up in the West.
That's not true. In Rome, slavery was natural. It was revolutionary when Christians said no.
Well, now most people will say slavery is bad.
50% of the population.
Doesn't matter if they grew up in the West.
Because they're Christian. That's why. That's what historian. No. Yes, historian Tom.
The entire world is not Christian.
You need to read the book.
Go ask like Muslims. I'm pretty sure they would say that like
even 18.
Slavery is bad. Like
you need to read the book Dominion. He'll explain this. The historian Tom Holland. You wouldn't be in a position to say slavery is bad. It's because we're all made in God's image, that we're all universally equal, and we can't have a social status that delineates
who God is
valued and who doesn't.
What? Huh?
The idea that we're all made in God's image is means that we're all equal. We all have value, and that's why slavery is wrong.
Then why is there still serial killers? Like, why do people do that if we're all made equally?
Because the Antichrist spirit, because people reject God.
I reject God. I'm not gonna go on a murder spree. Like, I'm not evil because I don't. That's just not how that works.
It is.
No.
Like, yes, like, none of these things would even be really wrong. It would just be like your opinion they're wrong. God has to like actually.
That's not what an opinion is. Opinion can't be wrong because it's my opinion. It can be wrong to you, but it's not objectively wrong if it's an opinion.
Right. That's why another reason we need God to say that like it's wrong. What Ted Bundy did was wrong because
we don't need God to say that. We know Ted Bundy did is wrong because we have morals.
What's the objective standard though that you would appeal to? You would just say it's wrong because in my opinion it's wrong, but that's not real.
No, I'd say it's wrong because he took human lives, and everyone deserves to live.
Yeah, but
because I have morals.
That's your opinion.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
Right. So opinions aren't real. So then it wouldn't really be wrong. So for us to say it's really
opinions
wrong,
are real.
No. If I say in my opinion there's no gravity, I can't go jump to the moon.
But in my opinion, murder is bad because people died.
Make it
wow.
Real. God has to make it real. So if God exists, then it's really bad. It's not just fake bad. See the difference?
No.
Okay.
Bad is also an opinion. Just saying something is bad, there's no objective bad. You can believe that something's bad, and then other people can believe it's not bad.
He must be like 15. Oh my goodness. I kind of want to start reading Tom Holland's book. But I should finish reading my book that I'm reading. Because this slavery thing comes up all the time. I need to like power through this book and get to the... I could like have more things to say about slavery. Yeah, exactly. I could tell. You're not allowed to be up here. You have to be 18 to get up here, dude. Yeah, I did. I did bring up slavery, not him. Yeah, I have faith in my creator too. Science needs God because science can't prove logic. Science can't prove objective moral values. Science can't prove uniformity of nature. And science needs all those things to be true to do science. Can I explain 1, 2, and 5? Well, 1, Christianity is proven with the transcendental argument for God. 2, atheism is irrational because it has no evidence. And 5, science requires preconditions that only the Christian or theism can account for, explain. So science can't prove science, basically. Science relies on things to be true that it can't prove. It's not self-contained. Science is a study of the natural world. So to study the natural world, you have to have a connection between your mind and the natural world. That would imply a unifying principle, which is God. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I disagree with your idea of science kind of being a theistic concept.
I don't understand. Like, well, but like, did you hear how I explained it?
Yeah, I was here for that. Yeah, if you want to explain it again, I might have missed some of it.
Well, like in the world God creates where he endows it with order, science would be possible. If you deny that God, then how do you explain like the order that would be necessary to do science? Like you have to repeat experiments to get the same results.
So yeah, I think that line of reasoning never really resonates with me because it's more of a kind of, well, because God did it. I mean,
No,
to say, well, why does science work so well? Because God did it never really works out.
it's saying we have to. God can account for this. If we don't account for it, then like fundamentally we can't have knowledge. It's not like, oh, God did it. It's like, no, I have a system of knowledge, you have a system of knowledge. Mine works and yours doesn't. That's what's the issue here.
What's the issue with my world? So, like, let's say God's proven not to be true. I mean, well, I think currently it is, but how does that at all affect science in any way?
Yeah, it would undermine. So all scientific claims would not be justified then, epistemically.
So, if God weren't true, then atoms don't exist.
The claims would have no warrant, no justification. There'd be no reason to believe anything science says.
I mean, like, science says some pretty basic things. I mean, you believe that bacteria exist.
Yeah.
So, like, if God isn't real, how is the validity of bacteria existing not valid anymore?
Well, bacteria existing isn't really like a scientific claim. Science would involve like saying like if you drop a pen, it will fall to the ground because like in the past when you dropped a pen, it fell to the ground. That would be like.
Well, no, science seems to be kind of everything, right? I mean, everything I mean, okay, let's go deeper. You think that atoms exist, right? I mean, we can see atoms. That's a theory in itself. The atomic theory. I mean, I think even if God didn't exist, atoms exist.
That's just like an observation.
Well, yeah, that's the first step to the scientific theory is an observation or a testable hypothesis. So I just don't see how if God didn't exist, then like science couldn't. For me, and the reason
scientific claims make predictions about the future, but you don't observe the future.
Oh, that's not true. They make observations about things we don't know. I mean, back then, like literally 50 years ago,
they make predictions about the future based on their findings. So those predictions wouldn't be validated without God, because you can't observe the future.
Well, so I'd say certain fields of science wouldn't really predict the future, but predict the universe around us. But like, I mean, 50 years ago, we used to think that cavities came from worms in our teeth. But then science got better, our medical field got better because of science, and now we know that cavities are caused by bacteria. I mean, I don't know. I'll see how that, like, with or without God, that would change anything.
Because the reasoning you're using is called inductive reasoning, and God's necessary for reasoning, inductive reasoning. So if there's no God, then inductive reasoning isn't warranted. So
Can you explain that to me? Why is God required for that?
Yeah, because the inductive reasoning presupposes that the future will resemble the past. Like when you touch a hot stove, you predict in the future, like if I touch a hot stove, it's gonna like burn me like it did in the past. So that's inductive reasoning, but that move isn't invalid. It's invalid logically unless you know that the future resembles the past. And we have that in Christianity. God reveals to us that the future resembles the past. There's no other proof for that.
I mean, is it more fair to say that the reason that we, like, every time I turn on my car, I expect it not to explode is because I've seen it happen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, right? I mean, same way even if I saw something happen once, people don't do the thing again. I mean, even though like maybe it wouldn't happen again.
That's a logical fallacy. It's called begging the question. Because
I couldn't hear you. What'd you say?
It's a logical fallacy called begging the question. That's why we can't do that.
I'm not following. Can you explain?
Yeah, you're saying, well, because past futures resembled past past, then the future resembles the past. It's you're just assuming the thing you're trying to prove. You're not proving it. You're just assuming something's true. Like you're having blind faith. Your car won't blow up.
I would say it's not faith. So faith has a definition of it's usually associated with religions, but it blind faith is saying like I have no supporting evidence to believe something.
Because it doesn't logically and necessarily follow that the future resembles the past. You have no justification to say that when you start your car, you turn the key, it's gonna start your car.
Okay, so what if I have this? What if I start my car and it explodes and it kills me? Is that fit into a worldview of God? I mean, the past did not follow what happened in the past anymore.
Yeah, he can account for there's regularities and there's irregularities, and God accounts for that. Yeah.
But if there are irregularities, what's wrong with my worldview? I mean, I'm expecting this to happen. Sometimes it doesn't.
You still have to justify that the future resembles the past because your reasoning is based off that.
It usually does, but sometimes it doesn't. Right? I mean,
that's what resemble means. That's why we use the word resemble. We don't say it's exact.
There's nothing wrong with saying that I expect this to happen because I've seen it happen hundreds of times. I mean, if I drop a pen on the floor.
If you want to be logical, I mean, then there is something wrong because what you're doing is a logical fallacy. So that's not logical. That's an illogical move, irrational.
How is that irrational to say I've seen it happen hundreds and hundreds of times this way? I bet you will happen again the next time. It's called statistics.
No, it's called begging the question. You're just assuming, you're trying to prove that the future will resemble the past. And when you say, well, because in the past the future resembled the past, that it will continue to do so, that's begging the question. You never observed the future, so you have no empirical knowledge of the future.
Let's say I have 100 candies in a bag. 99 of them are red and one of them is green. And I say, I'm going to draw a red one. And I put my hand in the bag and I take out a red one. Okay, well, I followed the predictability that was going to happen. I don't think that's an irrational thought to say. Most likely,
you're a Christian, yeah. If you're a Christian, it's not irrational, but it's totally freaking irrational for any non-Christian. That's it.
Well, that's just statistics. How is statistics at all? How do you have to be Christian to follow
statistics? Because to do statistics, you need something that's absolute and unchanging. That's static, that can account for the static variable.
But what in that example I gave was something that had to be unchanging in a static variable.
You wouldn't have static variables in a world without a God. There'd be nothing static. Everything would be changing all the time. Because what would limit any variable from changing? What limits the variable from changing?
What do you like? You're saying why doesn't just like something just randomly like manifesting happen? Like why don't when I hit a desk drawer, like my hand just go through it? Is that like
if there's nothing limiting an apple, then the apple could just change into an orange or a banana. If there's no limits to it, so what limits objects so that you can talk about probabilities?
Well, for that example, it is scientifically impossible that would happen.
Scientifically impossible.
Because
science limits objects. Science limits all the objects that exist.
Yes, saying science can clearly say science says that an apple will not manifest itself into an orange.
So you need to humble yourself because like that was a ridiculous response, and you're just saying things because you're arrogant and you think you know everything you don't.
So why is it irrational for me to say like science says an apple won't turn into an orange?
Because I'm asking you like I'm not asking you what science says. I'm asking you like what limits the apple? Like God limits things that exist, their properties. And if there's no limit to an object's properties, then it's just random. Everything's random, and then you don't have probability.
So just because you think that if God didn't exist, then anything could just happen. Like nothing is permanent ever.
Yeah, in the world without God, it's chaos because there's no limitations to anything.
I think I would disagree, but it is what it is.
What would limit an object that's not God?
the fact that it doesn't have to there's laws in our universe that guide us.
Yeah, and what limits the laws?
The fact that they're laws, like nothing has to limit them. Nothing has to hold on to these laws to make sure that they stay that way.
But they're not absolute and self-contained. So, yeah.
They are absolute, like law of gravity, law of inertia. Those are absolute laws. They happen forever, and they will always happen.
They're not
black holes.
They're not self-contained.
What does self-contained mean?
They depend on other things.
What thing is required? Because at least in the actual description of the laws, that is not true. What is, for your idea, contained in like the law of inertia? What has to contain it?
But like, the law of inertia needs the law of identity.
Law of identity. I've never heard of it.
It's a law of logic. So
can you explain it to me? I must not have heard of it.
It's just A equals A. It's just a thing is a thing.
I'm not really following with what that means. I'm a little confused with what you mean. I just, the laws themselves, I can't imagine any reason that they would have to be like that. A creator has to like make sure that these laws don't change whenever maybe they just don't. The laws of the universe just don't change.
Yeah, but that they require other things. They're not self-contained.
What things does the law of inertia require? It's going to happen no matter what. I mean, other than maybe a force happening to see it.
Like the law of identity.
I don't really understand that. Can I ask one more question before I go?
Okay.
So do you believe in evolution?
No.
So you don't think like things came from anything? They just spontaneously happened.
I believe in Mendelian genetics, but I don't believe in like humans descending from a great ape.
Okay, so you believe in Mendelian genetics?
Yeah.
So that's great. I am a geneticist. So with Mendelian genetics, we can see mutations all the time that change creatures, all of the time. It happens during recombination in your cells all the time, especially in cells that are haploid, which it means half the chromosomes. So if we can see this happening on a micro scale, right? I can see, well, there's a tiny change here. If we had millions and millions and millions of years, tiny things turn into big things. I mean, isn't that just a logical conclusion there?
No, that's highly improbable. That would never happen.
But okay, can you admit that it is true that there are tiny micro mutations that happen in things all the time? I'm not talking about macro mutations. Like, I'm not saying like somebody ends up with Down syndrome, right? That's a macro mutation. Something went wrong. I'm saying like micro mutations happen all the time. You have mutations all the time. That's how people get cancer. So what's like, these mutations happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if they happened for millions of years? I mean, now you've got macro mutations. I mean, this thing that's mutated multiple times is different than the original thing, right?
Seems more likely that Jesus is God and that the Bible's true and that the scientists are wrong.
I mean, it doesn't seem very logical. I mean, I feel like I can see like this happened.
You're not a very logical person. You demonstrated that.
I disagree. I mean, I think I've tried to be respectful of you, and I think you've been very respectful of my beliefs. And well, I just think like these tiny mutations can lead to massive mutations over time, as long as also with the fossil records that we have that shows also the DNA that we have. We are 99% similar to all other apes, great apes.
The fossil record supports creationism.
Oh, can you explain that? I don't understand.
Yeah, we don't have like these like slow, gradual, transitional fossils. We have like things just appearing and disappearing. So I would say the fossil record is strong evidence that goes against what you're saying.
What about like the fossil records of the Homo habilis, something that is like before humans were humans, pretty much, just a step before?
I don't know. I'm not aware of that specific.
So like we had our great apes, right? And then we kind of diverged into like gorillas, monkeys, and then us. And Homo habilis is like kind of the first extension of that, and then we kept evolving into humans. Like, what about that? Like, I mean, something that was almost exactly human but not human existed. We had a much larger jaw, much larger teeth. Our wisdom teeth fit in our mouth, used to at least. We see that. And we had a lot less muscle mass.
I don't know what you're talking about, so I can't really comment.
Okay, that's fair. No, I get it. Yeah. At least if that was true, I mean, let's just pretend it is true. I mean, wouldn't that be kind of a big thing? Like that shows at least we micro evolved there. There's a lot of things. We all can get huge muscles now. We grew 2 feet taller. The largest Homo habilis was like 4'9" or 4'7" or something like that. And the wisdom teeth fit in our mouth, and our jaws got smaller. I mean, aren't all of those signs of evolution? If that was true, I'm not gonna say like you can look it up yourself, but if that was true.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm just never gonna believe in evolution. I'm gonna interpret the data to not believe in evolution.
Okay, that's fair. I think I interpret the data to do it, but man, I'm definitely gonna give you a follow. You've been the most respectful person to talk to.
Really?
Yeah, for sure, dude. I've been yelled at and stuff like that. Thank you so much, man.
All right, I'll give you a follow back. Have a good one. I wish you well. That's a first. I try to be respectful, but I've never heard anyone say that. Welcome, Chigley.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Can you just? I'm just gonna put my. I'm not prepared. I'm just putting my earphones in, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, bear with me.
Yeah, human wisdom. When you kind of step back,
Can you hear me?
is nonsense. Yeah, welcome, Chigley.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
How are you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing well. What would you like to say?
So, yeah. Right. So I just want to go on to what you've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 debates to talk about here, haven't you? You've put Christianity is objectively proven.
Yeah.
You've then got atheism is irrational, no slavery in ancient Israel, abortion is child sacrifice, and science is a theistic concept.
Yes.
So I'll touch on the first one, if that's okay.
Sure.
I don't agree with that. The fact that Christianity is objectively proven.
Right.
Well, I mean, in the fact of all religions, there's many religions, isn't there? Some that don't exist anymore. There's new ones made up all the time, and every single religion has got their version of God.
Yes, and Christians have a Trinitarian God.
Yeah, I understand that concept as well. I've read about that, but the fact of the matter that people are saying roughly 2,000 to 3,000 gods in history. We can't say it's fact, but that's what people say. How can only one of those gods be the one true God? When everybody, other religion would argue against your true God and so forth. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I would say we would use like an argument to prove which one's correct. Like in science, for any phenomenon in science, there's like a million hypotheses. So I could say, like, well, how do we know this is the one correct hypothesis when there's a million hypotheses that it could be?
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
So I don't think
I mean, I am an atheist, but I am also agnostic.
Right,
So,
but you're going to believe in like scientific claims, but the same thing is going to apply for science, right?
Well, I mean, scientists say they can date the Earth to be about 4.5 billion years old from fossils and things like that, and dating rocks and things. But that's still guesswork, in my opinion. That is still guesswork.
Okay, so you're honest.
You know, some scientists have said that fossilization can occur in as early as 2,000 to 3,000 years, not 4.5 billion years.
Okay.
So that throws the dinosaurs out of the water. I don't believe in evolution, because how can we have evolved from, say, a monkey or an ape?
You don't believe in evolution
on the planet? No.
What?
No.
That's crazy. Almost every.
I don't know, because how can we have evolved from an inferior intelligent being to a very intelligent being.
You're a true skeptic. You're actually skeptical of science. See, most skeptics I talk to, they just believe everything science says without thinking about it.
No, that's not me. I think a lot differently to that. I mean, I'm a lot different to most people.
I'll give you credit for that. That's you.
My head is filled with a lot of stuff. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've got type 1 bipolar. So ever since 2001, my mindset has changed dramatically. I think a lot more deeply about
Then I researched everything.
Yeah.
I research everything and I come up with my own, not answers, but conclusions.
Yeah,
So,
bit of a conspiracy.
not really. I don't, people. I'm not a Mandela effect person or anything like that, which is ludicrous. No, I'm not. I'm not a weirdo or anything like that. But I just think about things. Well, you say objectively, but I think about things very objectively. But what I also believe is that something or someone or I don't know what must have created life. But I can't say whether it was God or something else.
Well, yeah, I guess I'd sort of agree. I would say that humans would be like science can't tell us anything about God, or like some jerk philosopher is not going to tell us about God.
No, I mean scientists will argue the fact that they've got proof of God's non-existence, but they haven't. Nobody has.
So I say like the only way we can know God is if God takes the initiative to like enter creation and human history and sort of reveal himself to us. And I believe that's
if that was fully true, then yeah, I could understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I just say like I accept, with the revelation, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, the prophets, that they're speaking for God.
Yeah.
If you deny that, then it's like then you're in a situation where, well, you could maybe believe in a God, but you're in the dark. You're never gonna really know anything.
Yeah.
But if God reveals himself, we can know things, basically.
Yeah, I mean anything that's not from this planet is classed as an alien, which is a word that we made up to categorize something not of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know whether there's any life on any other planets apart from this planet. Scientists are saying that there's billions and billions and billions or whatever, but I don't think there's ever big evidence of that either. So, but something must have created. We're far too complex in design. The way we're an organic machine, biological machine that needs fuel, it needs water. It has to survive like a machine, but in an organic way. Everything's there for a reason in the body to do a specific job. So it must have been a design.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
No, I think we can prove that it has to be a design because.
So if it's a design, then the Big Bang Theory is out of the water completely. That's ludicrous.
I suppose you could still salvage. Maybe you could say God designed the Big Bang. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that could be a possibility. I mean, the Big Bang Theory is basically what scientists are saying is that there was an explosion, a massive explosion of magnitude that just came from nothing. You can't have an explosion, even if there's one element.
Well, it comes from what they call a singularity, and the singularity is like, I guess, every matter and all energy condensed into one dot or something like that.
Yeah. Well, so if one element cannot create a Big Bang, there has to be another element to create the big explosion. How can a single element create anything? Life or anything?
Well, I think like with something like the Big Bang, like that's something you can't observe. So
no, it's impossible.
There's a lot of these.
It's just what you're told.
It's a lot of what we call prejudicial conjecture, or like basically the scientist is going to insert a lot of opinion in these theories.
Yeah.
And people act like everything's fact and there's no opinion involved, but that's not the case.
No, and this is, you call it a debate or a chat or whatever you want to call it. These conversations will never end.
Well, yeah.
There'll never be a full resolution because you're always going to have people that believe what they believe and so on and so on. There's some religions out there that I think are evil that you probably agree with me on.
That's the kind of how
But
I argue. Actually, see, I say our difference is it's not a matter of like evidence that I have to throw facts at you and you throw facts at me because we're both looking at the same facts and evidence, but that we disagree on how to like interpret the evidence. And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
um,
So are you? How long are you on here for? Because I've got an important phone call.
oh
I've
yeah,
missed 3 phone calls.
okay, sure. I'll be on later. Yeah,
Are you gonna be on late?
I should.
Because I'll come back and have another chat because I find it very interesting. And
All right,
so yeah. Sorry about that. I've had 3 phone calls and
no
I need to
worries.
bring this person back.
No
All
worries.
right. Well, take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you soon.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye
Bye. What if Jesus got a lower taper fade? Do you think I was thinking about getting one of those? Do you think I should get one? You know, Darth actually believes that Jesus had long or short hair, and he thinks that Jewish men at that time wore their hair short, so he doesn't like long-haired hippie Jesus. Darth would be like, "Jesus, go get a haircut." He also says that the wine they drank was grape juice. It did not contain any fermentation, which is pretty interesting. I had no idea. I'm sitting in deconstruction Justin's YouTube. They're live, and I'm just like typing in their chat. I just typed LOL atheism. Oh man. These atheists crack me up, man. Is that they say funny things. They say funny thing. So were we listening to Jay Dyer? Was that conversation over? Yeah, it finished. Yeah, so not getting any guess. I don't know if do I want to read. I kind of want. I guess I should read. Freedom in relation to the powers. The fine phrase of Cardinal. Faith in Christ makes us atheists in relation to the gods. Really? Cardinal. Who's that guy? Cardinelli. Wait, what? He's a recent. It's a recent guy. Cardinelli. Faith in Christ makes us atheists. He was a Roman Catholic priest. Interesting. He said, faith in Christ makes us atheists in relation to the gods. Weird. That's a weird way to put it. Liberation in Christ frees us not only from the flesh, but also from the powers. Here again, some explanation is necessary. The Bible speaks of forces which subjugate man. These are distinct from the flesh, which, in some sense, assimilates itself to man. They are not just evil and rebellious powers. They are not just powers which Scripture has rightly or wrongly, realistically or mythically personalized. We have to take the term power in its broadest sense, for the law and religion can also be described as powers. Liberation from the law is liberation from a power. We find ourselves in the common movement whereby man loses his freedom when he uses it against God and receives it when God re-establishes dialogue with him. God imposes a commandment on man. The decisive and constantly repeated act of man is to separate this word from one who speaks it and to try to make it his own. Adam did this. Faced by the one commandment of God, he isolated it under the serpent's influence. He set God aside and controlled the commandment by giving it another point and meaning. Finally, he made the commandment into a word of his own, by himself saying what is good and evil. The relationship with God was thus broken, and Adam's finitude became his alienation. Now, the Old Testament shows that this process was constantly repeated by man. It was especially repeated by the chosen people. Paul brings out the implications of the changing of God's commandment into law. We must not think, however, that the process was peculiar to Israel. At issue here is the relation of all men to God, and particularly of Christians. As is shown by Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, and also in the exhortations in the New Testament epistles, we constantly separate the commandment from him who speaks it. This means that it ceases to be a living word. It is a living commandment only because he who formulates it is the living God. Apart from him, this word becomes a dead word, comparable to any quotation from any author. It no longer draws its value, force, and authority from the one person who has spoken it, or the one who has spoken it. The commandment is not seen to be true for man because God is the true God. It now derives its authority from itself and its content. Man can thus evaluate its content according to his own criteria, like reason, but it is no longer invested with what God reveals himself to be for us, namely, love. Once we isolate the commandment from him who speaks it, it is no longer the commandment of love. It necessarily becomes word alone, and as such, constraint, duty, and obligation. Saying you can't separate the commands from the one commanding them, the one God of love, unconditional love, who through his grace gives us freedom. Above all, when man separates the commandment from God, when man separates the commandment from God in this way and sees it only as commandment, it becomes man's own word. He can then go on to treat it as his own word. He may still view it as the supreme and perfect word, but it is still the word of man. We should note this well, for it is still true even though, like the Jews, we continue to maintain explicitly that we regard it as the word of God. What we are describing is not a philosophical or theological attitude. It is our natural and unconscious inclination. It is our innermost tendency, even though in good faith we believe that we are defending the word of God. This always happens when we legalize the commandment, when we isolate it, when we try to obey it to the letter, or conversely, when we when we dismiss it easily by saying that it is outmoded, when we make a summary of it an ethics, when we bring it into our own circuit of good and evil, when we use it in our own lives to justify ourselves before God or to condemn ourselves in God's place, when we harden it into a reality that has been declared once and for all, when we measure it by our own standards, or when we take possession of it in exposition, discussion, or dissection. In all these common and familiar attitudes, we seize the commandment of God and make it our own word. This brings dialogue with God to an end. When we make the word of God our own word, we simply talk to ourselves. Our dialogue is with our own reflection in the mirror. Why do we unconsciously separate the commandment from him who speaks it? Is it because the latter makes us feel uncomfortable? He disturbs us by his incalculability, by his actuality, by the weight that he gives to his words. We prefer to deal with mere words, with a formula which is stable, which does not budge, which we can count on, which enables us to estimate our chances. A strange thing happens, however, when we make this separation, when we seize the commandment and make it into our own law, so that the living word is only past Scripture. We believe that in so doing we shall establish our power over this law and to some degree make it a chattel of ours. Instead, we invest this law itself with power. The power that we have denied to God, the power of love, is transferred to what we have made an emanation of our own, namely, the law. But now it is legal, moral power. It is an implacable power of judgment that hangs over us. We have made the law into a law of death. We wanted to make it into something else, but we are caught, for the law is a much weightier matter than we supposed. It was given by God. It was invested with power by God. It cannot be changed into a mere object in our own hands. It cannot be something mediocre and neutral. It was the word of life, and it is not going to become a mere phrase in fiction. It becomes the cause of death. Romans 7 through 13. What is he saying here? The law itself becomes a power over us. Mallet points out that the law is a power not because it incites to sin, but because fulfilling it leads to the supreme sin of denying grace. Bro is ignoring me.
How are you doing?
Not ignoring you, I just was like reading.
Nah, you're good, you're good. How is it objectively proven? Christianity.
The transcendental argument for God would be an objective proof. Like, if knowledge, then the Christian God. We have knowledge, therefore the Christian God. So you can like flesh that out more, but like basically God's not just like a normal fact, he's a standard of truth. So we would prove him like we prove like a standard of truth. So like, for example, like if God's not the standard of truth, like what would be the standard of truth? That's not God. Like how would you know something's true or not?
We know stuff is true based off of proof. So, for example, you know that I'm real because I'm talking to you. Okay. That's what a proof is. That's what a truth is.
But your standard there ultimately...
God's not objectively proven because there's no objective proof of God's real, like God existing. It's the same thing with like basically any way religion itself is a theory, and there's no way to prove that. There's no way to prove he's real. It's a theory.
It's not a theory. It's like it's a model of the world.
It's a theory because it's a theory of how life was created.
It's a model.
How is it a model?
It's a way to like look at existence, truth, and ethics. That's a model.
Yeah, but it's also a theory because it includes how life is created. The Bible is a model for how you could live your life, but religion is a theory. You're thinking of the Bible. The Bible is what tells you like what your morals should be. The Bible is what you base your morals off of, but religion itself is a theory because it's a theory of how life starts.
God would represent a model of reality. So we argue for God as a model of reality. Like, so you have a different model.
Just because you think that he's, oh my, I can't talk. Okay, just because you think he's real, basically what you've been saying this whole time is since you think he's real, then he's real. That's not how it works.
I'm saying that I have a model of reality and you have a model of reality. And that's how we have to figure out whose model of reality makes sense.
How does that lead back to Christianity being objectively true?
Because I can show you that only my model of reality is coherent and yours is like a contradiction.
Okay, can you explain?
Yeah, for example, like when you talk, you're assuming things like the uniformity of nature, and your model can't explain how there could be the uniformity of nature.
The model. Do you mean how nature works? Is that what you're trying to? Because I know how nature works. That's something that science explains. Science explains that. Do you not know how science works? Do you not know how biology works? Because I'm confused on.
Science is not the issue here. The issue is that you reason that the future resembles the past, but you would have on your model of reality no way to explain that.
So revolutions are one way to explain how the future models the past because governments notice, hey, if we do bad stuff, then people will revolt. And we've seen that in the past, which is why governments aren't shitty. That's how we...
In my model, God creates...
and now you're going back to your model. Just because it's your model doesn't mean it's true. That's what you...
This is going over your head. In my model, God creates the universe and endows it with order. And then so if you deny God, then where do you get the order?
You get the order of, like, okay, explain what you mean by order.
That the future resembles the past.
So the way I get that order is by looking at the past and realizing, or not, wait, no. Let me think about this real quick.
When you drop a pen, you believe that it's going to fall to the earth because in the past, when you drop a pen,
yeah.
So that's an inductive reasoning, and that only
if you drop a pen, you assume it's falling to the ground because of gravity, not because you've seen it happen in the past.
Well, that's the same thing.
No, it's not. Gravity is.
It is. It's the same thing.
What? Oh, okay. But
gravity is just like the scientific way to say that things fall to the earth.
It's a lot more than that. Gravity is essentially what keeps us bound to the earth. It does not have to do with falling. It's essentially, I'm not going to go all deep into it, but it also has to do with weight and stuff. Gravity works on different planets too. It's not just how things fall to the earth.
I understand that.
It's how Earth pulls stuff like that.
I'm simplifying it. I'm not being technical. So it only makes sense where like God endows the order that I can say, look, every time we drop the pen, it's going to fall because of the order that God, bestowed in the world.
Okay, so what you're saying right now is you're saying that's your belief, but it's not an objective belief.
Well, I'm saying on your model, there's nothing to explain that. I have
on my model, gravity explains it.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. What the fuck you mean gravity doesn't explain it? Do you not think gravity's real? What?
The order, not the
order. What are you talking about? The order? Have you watched Psyche K? You remind me of that one dude from Psyche K who's like, I feel like do you know what religious psychosis is?
Atheism?
Oh my god, no. Okay. Let's just move past the objective one because that one I don't think we're going to agree on. But how was atheism irrational? I want to know that one.
Well, like if I go, hey, I have this position and there's no evidence for my position, but I just believe it. You'd say I was being irrational.
But atheists Atheists have evidence for their thing, though.
What's the evidence for atheism?
Evolution, science.
Science doesn't prove God. Evolution doesn't prove there's no God. There's a lot of like Christians
It proves our beliefs. That's what it proves. When you are atheist, you just don't. You're not trying to disprove there's a God. When you're atheist, you just don't believe there's a God.
Exactly.
Science is not trying to disprove God. It's just saying what life is like, and it just does not include God as a factor at all. That's what you don't realize.
Well, it seems like we agree that it's irrational then.
How?
Well, because you didn't say anything rational there.
What do you mean?
Everything you said was like goofy. So it seems like we're in agreement that atheism is irrational.
Atheism? How? Okay. Explain what I said that was goofy. I'm curious.
You said, oh, well, we have like science, brah, and because like vibes, I don't need to provide evidence for my position.
I said evolution's evidence. The thing is, when you think about science, God isn't a factor if you're following the idea of science, because you're not considering God. God has nothing to do with science.
I'm asking ChatGPT if evolution proves atheism. No, evolution does not.
Well, evolution's a theory. It doesn't prove atheism. There's no way to prove if atheism is correct. There's no way to prove if God exists.
Then it's irrational. There we go.
No, okay, there's no way to prove God exists either, so that's irrational too.
I did prove it to you, though.
You said that you're saying your beliefs. Dude, you can... okay.
I said my system of truth is coherent and your system of truth is broken.
That's your opinion. The fuck do you mean it's coherent? Dude, there are people here who disagree with you, and there are people here who disagree with me.
Dude, by your own assumptions.
Dude, you are so unself-aware, it's insane to me. Dude, how are you?
Dude, I can like take your own assumptions and like truth would collapse and knowledge would be impossible based on your own position. Right?
Huh?
Dude, like, I can totally take your position.
No, okay, here's what your whole argument is. You're right because you said so. That is then your whole argument.
Fundamental level, that would destroy truth. Right.
Okay, now you're just talking weird, so.
Surf's up, dude.
All right, have a nice night.
I wish you well. Where do they grow these people? Well, P1 of tag would be self-authenticating. So to ask for an argument for tag, you don't understand the argument. Because, like, you have to give an account for how arguments would be possible on your model of reality. So on my model of reality, arguments are possible because God provides an objective standard for truth and ethics. And he can also explain the one and the many and solve induction so that we can argue. So do you have anything like that on your model of reality? Do you have anything that's absolute, unchanging and universal, self-contained, self-authenticating, revealing itself in human history? You got something like that? Welcome, Brandon.
Yeah, use my worldview to prove your worldview. So can you start with your worldview and substantiate P1 of tag without assuming it, because you just assumed it?
So when you
saying it's self-authenticating, you're just assuming it.
No,
so
when you ask when you ask for an argument for P1 of tag,
no, I'm not asking for an argument. I'm just asking you to substantiate P1.
To flesh it out?
Yeah, without assuming it.
It's just, yeah, God's revealed himself in creation.
Yeah, that's an assumption. You can't start with God, because God's your conclusion. You can't put God in your premise, because God is your conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so can you try again?
Yeah, it's like, how about, here, I'll dumb it down for you.
You don't have to dumb it down. You actually have to smarten it up.
If knowledge, then
No, if is a assumption. You can't start with an if.
okay. So if P then Q that's not valid.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah,
But you have to substantiate P1 so that the if is sound.
If P then Q, if knowledge.
Yeah, so now make P1 sound.
Yeah, if knowledge, then God.
Yeah, that's the assumption.
What?
I'm asking you to substantiate P1.
What is
not repeat it?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. If P.
No, you're not. You're just repeating it.
Yeah, it's a modus. I'm giving you a modus ponens.
No, you're not.
Okay, so you're just bickering?
I'm not trying to bicker. I'm trying to get you to substantiate
Yes, you
P1.
are. No, you're not.
I'm asking you to.
No, you're not.
I just asked you to.
No, you didn't.
Why are you acting less than my 13-year-old?
I'm not.
Okay.
Okay. I can do that too. Welcome.
Hi, Mars.
Hi.
Did you happen to, I don't know how long you've been live. Did you happen to see me on Darth's live?
No.
Oh, I just got blocked again. It's like every Sunday, man. Once again, Darth was not able to answer a question, so he crashed out. Even his minions were saying, hey, just answer. So I'm wondering if maybe you want to give it a whack?
Yeah, I bet you got him. Sure.
Okay. So I don't necessarily know if I got him. He just wouldn't answer. So I don't know whether I'm right or wrong or whatever. Okay. So I have a question about Deuteronomy 22, verses 13 through 21.
Well, how would I know anything about that? I'm not a Bible scholar.
I mean, you could look it up, right? I just have a question about omniscience.
What's your question?
So the verse basically says, I won't bother reading it all if you're not interested, but the verse here in Deuteronomy basically says that if a woman doesn't bleed on upon her first time consummating with her husband, it proves that she's not a virgin and she should be stoned to death. So since less than half of women bleed when they lose their virginity, I'm just wondering if why God would say that those women should be stoned.
Well, I think you don't understand how the law works. So academics like Dilbert Hillers or John Walton or Bruce Wells, they'll point out that the law is more didactic and exhortational than it's not like a modern law code where they go to court and they determine in court who's right or wrong based on the law code.
Right. Here, the only determiner they allow is a cloth with blood on it. That's it.
So yeah, they don't follow that strict. That's not strictly followed in a courtroom setting. That's not how the laws work back then. They're more
and that's okay to me. I guess my question is just more what it implies. I think that this implies that if a woman doesn't bleed during her virginity, then she's not a virgin. So I guess since that's obviously not the case, why would it bother to imply it, whether it's, acted upon or not?
Okay, think about I don't know if you have children, but when a parent says to their children, hey, always share your toys with others, right? That's not a strict legal rule where you're going to punish someone if they don't do that. It's just it's like a teaching moment where you're trying to teach them about being fair and trying to help them in their life. So that's what the Mosaic law is sort of saying. It's just a guideline saying that you should, not engage in premarital schmecks. Right?
Okay. So you're saying this shouldn't be taken literally.
There's no evidence that this is going to be enforced in a courtroom setting.
Right. That's not my worry. The enforcement of it is irrelevant to me.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand the implication. Are you saying that, sorry, I just want to, are you saying that this should not be taken literally?
I'm saying when the parent says always share your toys, if the child doesn't share the toys, the parent's not going to punish the child, right?
Right, but if the
It's like
parent said,
advice.
always share your toys or you'll be
It's
stoned to
like
death.
advice. It's advice. That's how they would word things. It's like a hyperbolic.
So you're saying it's not literal.
Yeah, it's not treated as like
So do you not agree with Darth about the perspicuity of scripture?
when the parent says always share your toys, they're not being strictly literal.
Right, but if the parent said, always share your toys or you'll be stoned to death, that seems literal to me. So
Oh,
the
well,
problem is the
maybe
contingency
you should
here.
take it up with the academics who disagree with you. Maybe you should do that.
I'm just wondering your opinion here.
I'm telling you, the academics say these laws are just like this is good advice from a parent rather than like a strictly enforced. So they're not going around unaliving women. That didn't happen.
I don't care if it happened, but
Of
the
course
verse
you don't
says
care,
she
because
shall continue to
why
be.
would that matter? Why would reality matter to a freaking atheist?
I'm not an
Would you
atheist.
just what are you?
I'm a theist.
Oh, what God do you believe in?
Probably the same one as you, similar. I just don't believe the Bible.
Oh, okay.
So, anyways, this does say, if, however, the charge is true and no proof of the woman's virginity can be found, she shall be brought to the door of her father's house, and there the men of her town shall stone her to death. She has done an outrageous thing in Israel by being promiscuous while still in her father's house. You must purge the evil from among you.
You just ignored everything I said. Classic atheism. My God. So the law itself becomes a power over us, which constrains and binds us and pushes us further and further away from God. This is what the Bible is showing us when it describes the exaltation of the Torah, the adoration of the word and the letter, and the fanatical obedience that will lead to conflict with the Son of God and ultimately to his death. For we should not forget that when we deaden the commandment so that it is no longer the place of dialogue with the Father, when we make it of our own word and thus break off the relation with the love of the living God, this does not simply mean that we quarantine ourselves and shut ourselves up in a ghetto. It means that we do violence to God himself. God willed to be loved, and in refusing this love, we bring about the death of God. Deicide, y'all. Her question was just about women on their wedding night not breaking their hymen, therefore they should be stoned or something goofy. Welcome, Matthew.
Hello.
Hello.
Why are you Christian, if I may ask?
I'm a Christian because I love the freedom that comes from serving God.
Do you have proof of God?
Yes.
What is it?
Transcendental argument for God. So God's like a standard of truth. And if you deny God as the standard of truth, then you will have no standard of truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've always been an atheist, and that's because I always do you know Alex O'Connor?
Yes.
I follow him a lot, but Christians tell me that he spews a lot of misinformation, I guess, so I'm just trying to figure out which side to be on.
Yeah, I've heard him say some goofy things recently, like he said God Jesus never said he's God in Mark, which is nuts.
Yeah. Here's one thing as an atheist I can agree with. Sometimes I don't think he knows what he's talking about. I can say that.
And he's gotten to this big like bickering war because Wef Hutz said the Isaiah scroll was like word for word translation to the book of Isaiah in the Messianic text. And it's like, no, it's not word for word. It's only 95% accurate. But when we're saying word for word, when we're talking about historical documents, typically word for word doesn't mean like 100%.
So does he so you don't really think he breaks arguments down good or something?
Well, in that case, he was being pretty petty. I think. I guess like nitpicky. Like if I imagine you talk to someone for 3 hours, someone could nitpick and find like you were wrong on some things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I mean, I've always just wanted to see what side made sense and all that, and I'm kind of skeptical on it, but I just wanted to hear somebody else kind of challenge his credibility, because I always hear people saying how intelligent and brilliant he is, but sounds like you don't really think he's as brilliant as people say he is.
Well, he's definitely like a good speaker, and
Yeah.
like I think he's smart. It's just like I think he's a motivated reasoner. Like I think I am too. Like clearly, I have motivations. So, like I want the Bible to be true and all that stuff. We all have that, and
Yeah.
I just think like he sometimes lets his motivations get in the way of like common sense. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. There were a lot of things.
I'm sure I do too. So.
Yeah. But I don't know. I just wanted to figure it out. That's all. But
Well, I think we gotta examine our biases. So that's a good way to start. Because that's what one day I realized I was raised Catholic and I sort of had this bias. And I'm like, well, what if I like give Christianity a chance and try to like be really open minded, really give it a chance. And I read the Gospels and I'm like, you know what Jesus said like spoke to my heart. I'm like, I must follow him. You know, that's it. So.
yeah, that's true. I mean, and I've used to talk to a lot of atheists before, like myself before, trying to figure it all out. And there are always hard parts about it. Like I didn't know how somebody could be so against it. I never understood why, but I guess it kind of makes sense to them. They don't really have a worldview on religion. I guess they believe in themselves.
I think a lot of them come because I think there are a lot of like goofy cultish types of Christianity, like Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
So I think if you came from like if you have some like church hurt, I could see where you kind of go hard against it because you see it's harmful because it like hurt you personally. So I think a lot of these people were like personally hurt. That's not really true for Alex though, but I think a lot of people, they grew up in a kooky Christian cult type situation. And then
I just think Alex knows how to speak. I think that's his strong suit. I just don't.
Yeah, definitely.
I just don't think he can ground. I just don't think he can actually ground the a lot of the concepts he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he ends up taking some goofy positions. Like I've heard him say he's a hard determinist. Well, I think that's kind of goofy because then there's no truth. Then you're not evaluating between true and false. You're just determined to believe X.
Yeah, and I've followed a lot of people. Like I followed some Christians. Like you probably know this guy Cliff Netchell. Do you know him?
Yeah, he's more of like a preacher. I've seen.
Yeah, he's more of a preacher. He's not a debater.
Mm-hmm.
But Alex tried debating him one time on like a computer.
I saw a little bit of that, and I heard he did not do very well. The Cliff guy did not do very well on that. That's what I heard.
I think people are always going to say Cliff doesn't do well.
Oh, you thought he did all right? I didn't really watch it much, so I know that I saw a video where Inspiring Philosophy was really butthurt about it. And like
they didn't show him talking. That's why.
I thought Inspiring Philosophy is an asshole. So
yeah, well, no, what they did was they showed Alex talking in a lot of the clips, but they didn't show Cliff's response to him.
Yeah, they tend to do that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I just think Alex has a strong suit, like I said, of speaking. But
For sure.
I just came around just because I just wanted to see if people have opposite views of him, or just don't really, or don't think he's as smart as a lot of people say he is. That's all.
Well, you don't get to be 1 million subscribers on YouTube if you don't have some talent. So he knows what he's doing in social media. So
yeah,
give him that.
Yeah, but there's just some things I think he needs to ground better.
Yeah, it's just hard with atheism because I think this is what Darth always says is that atheism just ends up being a lot of like cliches and platitudes. There's not a lot of substance to it. So I think like as an atheist content provider, it's like kind of hard. So I don't know. I feel Alex is playing like that.
I just think, yeah, I mean, and it's kind of weird because I've seen 3 of his videos, and he just keeps saying, have you ever, I don't know, sometimes he keeps saying the same concept over and over and over again, and I never get it.
Mhm.
It's never, doesn't
Usually
work.
just comes down to like, I'm just not convinced, but well, that is not enough to get you to like materialism or something, or naturalism, or
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, me too.
Wish you well. Darth just got beat. Oh no. Who beat Darth? I've never seen Darth get cooked. There's no way. It can't happen. The guy is too rhetorically strong. And he's got mods. By a girl? What? Is Darth alive right now? I should be watching Darth. But I kind of want to read this book, so if I'm watching Darth and I can't really read. Dude, Darth never gets cooked. Y'all playing. He just ended. We must have went live at the same time because he wasn't live when I was like setting up. I always check. Kevin Carnahan? I'm not sure. Oh, he's live again. No, I can't check. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, unconvinced doesn't do anything. Like, he can be unconvinced, but that's a poor position because if I'm providing an argument and he's just going, I'm unconvinced, well, I'm just going to win that debate, right? I don't understand how you can. One side provides arguments and then one side goes, I'm not convinced. How do you go with the I'm not convinced? They didn't even put an argument out. He should at least have an argument for why he's not convinced. But then, I mean, anyone's welcome to come up if they want. I'm looking to like do debates or whatever, but usually people like to come up and like just start preaching or something. But I'm also like reading, so I can do that too. Christianity may well be proven. The existence of 3,000 gods isn't. I don't know what that means. Does evidence outweigh the skepticism? I think so, because the transcendental argument for God is an anti-skeptical argument. That's why atheists don't like the transcendental argument, because it's anti-skeptical, and they just want to sit there and be skeptical all day, so they don't know how to
One
deal.
second.
Are you not? You're not an adult. You are not an adult. In the form of word or law or morality, the law invades our lives. It becomes a crushing and oppressive power that drives us away from God. It brings us under the attraction of evil and makes the good sterile and dissected. It becomes demanding and mingles with moral systems of the world, except that it is infinitely more rigorous, being a power in the sense that moral systems can never be. It takes possession of our lives. Thus man comes to be made for the Sabbath. Man himself brings this about, but only because the law comes from a higher place than man. This is why the law becomes a source of bondage, and this is why Crespi is right when he says that the law corresponds to the nature of man. There's a footnote. This is why it exists and also why it is a burden. Welcome.
That was good, man.
Welcome. What would you like to say?
So I just want to ask, like, see when you say Christianity is objectively proven, like, what do you mean? Because traditionally, I would say that like it's quite faith based. It's like you can never know truly. So I'm curious to like where your kind of belief lies.
Well, so because I think God is a different type of fact. Like God is a standard of truth, or like a system of truth. And so I think at issue here is like I have this like Christian system of truth, and you have some non-Christian system of truth. But if we actually compare the systems, that only mine is going to be coherent, and yours is going to make truth impossible.
Well, I think I've not said anything about my systems, so
What's that?
I mean I've not said anything about the way my moral compass or
I know,
my
but
morals are like derived from. So I think that's a bit rich, but I think I do get it. Like there's nothing wrong with fucking believing that your morals are like are right because they're derived from something that is like it's hundreds of years old, and it wouldn't have lasted without people finding meaning in it. And I think personally, I don't, as much as you say Christianity is objectively proven, I think whether it is or not doesn't matter, because if it provides people with a belief and a comfort that can provide them moral values and a moral compass, then fucking brilliant.
yeah, it has utility,
On
whether it's proven or not. But I can also objectively prove it. So
then let's go. I
Well,
want
yeah.
to hear it. I'm curious.
So there's going to be an interconnected relationship between like existence, truth, and values. So like if something exists, then it's true something exists. And if something is true, then something exists. And also
Well, no, because
yeah.
I mean, no, because I could say that like I could say I have five I don't know, I have 5 dreams that I want to have. Those dreams they're not a physical thing, they don't exist. If you mean like exist in like a kind of metaphorical sense, then fair enough, yeah. But I'll not interrupt, please keep talking.
I mean, if something exists in the world, physically or whatever, then it's just going to be true that the thing exists. And if something's
Well,
true,
of course.
something must exist. Because if nothing exists, then nothing would be true. So there's a relationship between truth and existence, but also values, because truth incorporates values. You can't have truth without values. Like, why
Well,
ought
no, I think, but that's the thing. Like, me and you, we clearly operate on different values, but there are things we both know to be true, and that's not because like there's like a difference between objective truth for you, like something that you see as true might not be the same for me, or it could be true for both of us, and we would have a different viewpoint on it.
But you value true things more than you value untrue things. And so if you didn't value,
Naturally.
if you didn't have that value, then there would be no truth. If there's no value between truth and false, then there's no truth. So truth needs value and existence. So all of these three things, truth, existence, and values, they're all interconnected and interrelated. They depend upon each other. And since in my system, God gives us existence, God gives us truth, and God gives us values, all those three things are connected and interconnected, and it makes sense.
Yeah, so
you need all those three things to understand the world. If you deny God, now those three things are not connected. Everything's
So,
disconnected.
is what you're saying. So essentially, like, see if you lived in a world without the objective proof of Christianity, do you think like that would be like an immoral world and it'd be like full of lies and deceit and everything?
Well, if the atheist model of reality can't be true, because I'm saying like if we were to assume it.
Oh no, I'm not talking about that at all. Like I'm saying, like, do you derive like do you think morality is driven by your religion and your faith and your knowledge that there is truth?
Well, it's either going to be like something is right or wrong because of my opinion, or God is going to make something right or wrong in a real sense. So if you want right and wrong to have reality to it, then there's going to have to be a God, because otherwise it's just right and wrong is going to be a fantasy, right?
I mean, I don't think so.
I don't see how you could argue with that. We know opinions aren't the same thing as reality?
No, but I'm not saying opinions. I'm saying like as moral values. Do you like are your moral values derived from your faith? Is it faith based? Like your knowledge of what is right and wrong. Do you believe that is something provided to you by God?
Yeah, God reveals what's good. Otherwise, I don't
So,
know what's good.
so if you didn't have faith in God, would like you just go about fucking raping and murdering people, bro? Like what the fuck? God, fuck, man.
All that talking for that. What a goof. Welcome, talking. Welcome, talking.
Hey, good afternoon. What's up?
Yeah, doing well. What would you like to say?
Your 5 points here are flawed, really.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. 1, 2, and 3 are really just claims you're making without supporting them and asking the other person to argue the other side. That's, reversing the burden of proof on those. Abortion being child sacrifice, that's interesting. Again, that's just another claim you're making. Science is a theistic concept. Another claim, also unsupported. So there's really nothing for the other party to even refute here because you're just making claims.
Well, I have arguments.
Great. So prove that Christianity is objectively proven.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Sure. If Christian theism is not the case, then you cannot account for the uniformity.
Can you say that again? I couldn't really hear you.
Christianity, the Christian God is necessary for facts. So if you deny the Christian God, it's like denying facts, and you can't deny facts. So,
well, I can refute that statement automatically. 2 plus 2 is 4, no matter if there's a Christian God or not.
That's incorrect.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, please, let's hear it. Let's hear how 2 plus 2 would not be 4 if the Christian God didn't exist.
2 is an immaterial object. How would you explain immaterial objects?
It's a fact that 2 plus 2 is 4. Yeah. You just said if the Christian God didn't exist, that would not be a fact.
Yeah, where would you get an immaterial object that's universal and unchanging without the...
Mathematics doesn't need a God to be true.
That's a claim.
Mathematics would still work on Mars.
That's a claim.
Well, great.
So what's your metaphysical justification for a universal invariant immaterial object?
Mathematics doesn't need one.
You think that's you lost that debate?
Just saying I lost it. That's wonderful. All right, so you're the usual Christian apologist who has no arguments. You must listen to Darth Dawkins a lot.
I gave you an argument. You just ignored it.
Your argument was nuh-uh.
Since you don't want to debate, perhaps you need therapy. What's your relationship like with your father?
We actually have discussions in, that sort of thing.
Did you feel like maybe he worked too much when you were growing up and like he didn't give you enough attention? Now you like seek attention by saying ridiculous things like atheism and stuff?
Oh no, I like arguing with Christians because they're dumb. They make stupid statements, like the 5 points you made on your little video here. You made claims and can't back them up,
Yeah, but when you
and then you try to reverse the burden of proof by saying, "Prove me wrong." Well, you're not even making a statement.
yeah, but when you say that A is B, when you say A is B, that's an active predication, and that's a vertical claim. So can you?
I didn't make a statement like that.
Yeah, whenever you talk, when you go, you're making a claim that's going A is B.
When did I say that? So are you going to continue to strawman me? Is that what you're going to do?
You said I was making claims.
Yes, your 5 statements are claims.
But when you say I'm making claims, you're saying A is B. That's an active predication. So that's a vertical claim. So how do you justify that? You're using logic. What's universal, unchanging, and immaterial?
Mathematics.
Yeah.
So, do you have any actual points to make on the 5 statements that you've made? And
what a goofball. What a unique person. So unique. He's a butterfly. Anyways, what were we talking about? The law becomes a source of bondage. This is why Crespi is right when he says that the law corresponds to the nature of man. This is why it exists, and also why it is a burden. When Jesus attacks the Jewish commandments, he acts as a liberator who deals with everything that enslaves man. The law was made for man, but man has been made for the law in the hope that he can be saved and freed by subjugation to it. In reality, a new bondage has been set up, a gilded bondage in some regards. For the moment man was brought under the law, he was given the hope, in spite of all the evidence, that a means was given to him whereby he could please God and escape his wrath. This was possible only because the law itself not merely had power, but had itself become a power with its own intrinsic authority. This is why it can enslave, and why its threat continues even to our own day. Crespi is also right when he says that we are always in danger of being satisfied once more with the purely external law, alienating our freedom. Through sloth or false comfort, by complying with the order outlined by the law, we are constantly tempted to reinvest our freedom in unimaginative obedience to commandments. Hence, the commandments replaces our freedom and takes charge of our moral existence. Precisely to the extent that the law is a power over us. Maybe I should ChatGPT that. That's actually pretty dense and important. Oh yeah, evolution proves atheism. Some guy said that today. God. Atheists say the darndest things, y'all. Welcome, Oscar.
Hello. Where are you from, man? Are you American or Canadian?
I'm American.
Nice. I just wanted to make you explain the second point, just so I understand. I didn't
Sure.
understand why atheism is irrational.
If I say I have a position, but I have no evidence for my position, you would think my position's irrational. And that's the same thing with atheism. They don't have evidence for atheism, so their position's emotional.
I would kind of argue it's the same with Christianity. I mean,
You
You
could argue
can.
that, but like, I mean, I have proof that Christianity is true. So it's not like I'm sitting here
I
with.
mean, it's written around real historical events, sure, and you can make the argument that lots of people and witnesses testified to the same thing and died for the same thing. But then again, do you have their bodies? Can you prove that they existed? Like this whole, like the main argument that I heard that Christianity is objectively true is all of those witnesses and all of his followers, but you can't objectively, factually prove that they existed either. So I mean, you
Well,
kind of.
that's you're only saying that because your system of truth sucks. So you need the Christian system of truth. So only Christians have a coherent system of truth, and the system of truth you're using to evaluate the world is busted. That's why you don't think is good.
In what way is my my view busted? What do you mean?
Well, you you probably can't account for like immaterial objects for one. Like, are you an atheist?
I don't really know. I'm just here for the vibe, you know.
Yeah. So your model of reality, you couldn't explain like inductive reasoning, for example, and that's going to be a big problem.
But why so? Hey, what do you mean? Could you explain what it means? Because English is not my first language, you know.
So whenever you touch a hot stove, you believe that in the future, if you touch a hot stove, it's going to like burn your hand. That's called um, an inductive reasoning, and it's only going to be a valid move, or it's only logical if you're a Christian, because Christians have justification for there to be like order that would be necessary for that reasoning to be valid.
I mean, I mean, in the moral sense, yeah, but in the factual sense, I mean, you guys kind of cherry pick when you guys want to interpret something and take something literal.
Well, think about it this way: if you go by like empiricism, that has to do with like what we can observe. We trust what we can observe. Well, we never observe the future. So when you believe that, well, in the past I touched the hot stove and it hurt, so in the future when I touch the hot stove it'll hurt. You never observe the future, so that's an invalid move. Yet all scientific reasoning is based on that invalid move. So that's a big problem.
I mean, but it's kind of based on what people have presented as evidence and people who have educated and devoted their whole life to studying that certain field. Like if you take medicine, I wouldn't say that trusting like trust you got to trust like third party systems. Like you trust your doctor that he's able to perform a surgery, you like a knee surgery, which is not really that dangerous, but because that doctor has done that before, because you've heard about it and you know the outcome, the possible outcome, you still have to trust that should be fine. I mean, you at some to some degree you have to trust third party account system. I don't know how to phrase it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like to trust that the future is going to be like, to trust that in the future the stove will burn my hand. I have to also trust that God is going to order the world so that the future is going to be like that. And if God,
Yeah, but we just have different things that I mean, I just tend to look at it more subjectively. I think you look at it more.
you're going to have blind faith, but that blind faith is going to undermine all like knowledge and truth, because you have to have, that means you have blind faith in everything whenever you reason.
Yeah, could argue the same for Christianity. I mean, you guys.
No, because in my model, God designs my reasoning so I can trust my reasoning. I don't have to have blind faith in my reason. I just have to put my faith in Christ, which is going to be consistent with my system. However, when you put faith in something, that's going to be inconsistent with like how you want to have evidence for things.
Yeah, it's more that I think science look at something that nothing is objectively true. I mean, we can speculate as to what it can be like, how the universe were created. There's a reason why there's multiple theories. I mean, science is not, the whole idea of science is pretty broad. It's just a collection of theories backed with interpretations of what they believe to be facts, like evolution. It could have been different than what we've interpreted so far, but it's, for me, it seems like the most rational explanation as to how it's happened. And I mean, there has been. I mean, I like to think that, at least from what I've heard. I mean, I've grown up with Christianity. I was raised like in a like my I don't know what it's called, preschool Christian. Like we went to church in the preschool. So like there are some inconsistencies in the Bible that I find kind of weird.
But it wouldn't be wrong to be why would it be wrong to be inconsistent?
I think at least in the Bible part, because it tells you that it's the only truth and the only way you should look at something, while science kind of encourages you to challenge, and nothing is really set in stone, while Christianity is quite literally set in stone. I mean, the Ten Commandments. So it's like the truth and nothing but the truth. But then again, you have different variations of the same religion, because obviously the history and it's been interpreted differently. But if Christianity was just completely true, then why isn't it just like why do people choose not to believe then, if it's so rational? And so why do you think people find issues with religion then, if it's fully objectively proven all the time? Why do you think people might disagree with what Christianity
I
preaches?
mean, people are just not. People are mostly emotions based. Like there's flat earthers, for example, because of their emotions. So people don't really care about evidence and logic, and that's why we have like non-Christians. Because I think if people were logic and evidence based, everyone would be a Christian.
But then again, there's no actual like factual proof.
Of course there
that. I mean, they've written it around historical stuff, but they haven't really uncovered any.
Yeah, I don't. So like,
bodies.
the fact that you're talking to me proves Christianity, because it only makes sense in the Christian worldview.
What do you mean? That I'm talking to you?
Yeah, that proves God. You can only talk if atheism was true. You wouldn't be able to talk.
What do you base that on? How do you interpret that?
Because to talk, there's preconditions that need to be. Things need to be true for you to be able to talk. You have to be able to. There has to be the uniformity of nature, because you're consistently making the same mouth sounds over and over and over when you repeat the same words. So you wouldn't be able to do that.
I think we were able to talk before Christianity.
No, there's no before. Christianity starts at the Garden of Eden. So Christianity starts at the beginning. There's no.
Yeah, and I believe it started with evolution, so we can just disagree there.
You can't prove anything because you deny the Bible. So you have no system.
I can't prove anything because we deny that, but we found skeletons, dude. We literally found skeleton that shows different forms of evolution in different continents in time periods, and they sort of match up.
Yeah, but any proof would require the Christian God, because proof is impossible without reference to the Christian God.
I think like 600 or other religions would disagree with you, and also.
I mean, yeah, people can disagree, but can they prove I'm wrong? No.
Wait, let me just. Okay, your claim is nothing can be factually true if it doesn't align with what God is saying. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying okay, so God is a system of truth. He's not just a fact. And yeah, the only coherent, unique system of truth is the Christian system. All other systems of truth fail.
I mean, you have a theological perspective on this. So that God embodies absolute truth and love, right? Like that's his whole thing.
God is the source of existence, truth, and values. So he's not just a regular fact.
Yeah, he's a unified reality, right? That's what you're trying to say?
Yes.
So God might be viewed as the ultimate. So he's the ultimate unity, and he's the truth.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah, without God, you wouldn't have unity in your system.
From your point of view, because you don't believe in evolution, or I mean,
it doesn't get you unity.
I think
no, your system would be all disconnected. There'd be nothing to connect the dots. That's why it doesn't.
I mean, but this metaphysical claim, or it's kind of an abstract claim. I mean, it's difficult to.
It's not. It's. There's.
I mean, it is. That's exactly what, because you claim that God is the system of truth.
mean, in a sense, it's abstract, but it also like there's metaphysical realities. It's not purely abstract. Like when you build a bridge, the design of the bridge is an abstraction, but then it connects to reality. So the fact that the concepts in our head align with reality, that's empirically verifiable when we build a bridge.
I mean, I think it's more dependent on your faith because it kind of assumes that God exists and it's inherently that's what you believe, right? So to be able to support that claim, you have to have a belief in God. But
Everyone
I
believes in
believe
God.
something differently.
Everyone acts and reasons as if there is a God, whether they admit it or not, because God's necessary for like nearly everything we do.
No, I think the reason why it's easy to make that conclusion is because it's been like that through history. I think we've always been trying to find the God in anything. Like we've had religions
Okay,
through
but I gave a proof though.
Nah, I mean that's a proof in your belief, but I believe
No, it's
something
a
different.
proof.
I believe in human understanding, and that truth can evolve over time, and that truth is a bit more dynamic than just like something concrete.
So the reason you're saying no, your system you can't prove anything, because I just gave you a proof, and you go, no, that's not proof.
I
You
mean,
know
that's
why
no.
I say
I'm
that?
saying it's just
It's
easier.
because
I'm
your
just saying.
system, your model of reality, makes truth impossible, and it makes proving anything impossible. Therefore, it's self-defeating. Therefore, it can't be true. Therefore, Christianity is true. Gotcha, bitch.
There's no real gotcha. I think we just have.
You're just ignoring what I'm saying, dude. Yeah. Well, if I just ignore everything you say, and then I just go, well, I think things. Well, I had a thought today. And because I had a thought today, then that thought is true. And I'm just gonna ignore everything you're saying. And la di da di da, la la la, la la la. This is how I debate. La 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 la. Goof. Goofy, goofy, goofy. This passage highlights the idea that strict adherence to laws or rules, whether moral, religious, or societal, can sometimes trap us instead of liberating us. Here's a simpler explanation. Laws and rules are meant to guide us and help us live better lives. However, when we focus too much on following them perfectly, they can become oppressive. Instead of feeling free to choose good actions out of love or kindness, we might feel pressured or even scared into obeying out of fear of punishment or failure. This can make us feel distant from God or from the deeper purpose of life, because we're more concerned with checking off rules than living with true goodness in our hearts. Over time, the rules can take over, controlling us and making us feel like we exist to serve the rules, like man was made for the Sabbath instead of the Sabbath being made for man. Jesus challenges this way of thinking. He teaches that laws should serve people, not enslave them. True freedom comes from love, grace, and inner transformation, not just rigid obedience to external rules. But even today, we can fall into the trap of letting rules take away our freedom, making us complacent or too comfortable with simply following orders instead of seeking real moral growth. Yeah, you say precisely to the extent that the law is a power over us. For more confirmation on understanding this, Colossians 2:14, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, he took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross, and having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a shoe of them openly, triumphing over them in it. Here and elsewhere, Paul equates the law and the principalities of power. Let's see here. This looks like an important passage. Yeah, reading is hard. I should just watch the movie. We are absolutely unable to gain freedom from it ourselves. A negative attitude in no way brings release from it. To deny that the law is God's word is precisely to transform it into a subjugating power. To deny that its content has any value at all is precisely to imprison oneself in the movement of good and evil that we described in the introduction. Finally, by a curious coincidence, for those who think they have freed themselves from the law are the very ones who have constructed far more oppressive moral or immoral systems incorporating essential features of the law itself, as may be seen in the bourgeoisie morality of Voltaire or the neo-bourgeois morality of the Soviet Union. In an odd and mysterious way, man can never free himself from this power that subjugates him. As Bonhoeffer points out in his Ethics, the attitude of Jesus to the law is the direct opposite of that of the Pharisees. He rejects their casuistry and will not solve their hard cases. Matthew 22. His freedom will not let him be drawn into their debates. Freedom in relation to the law means freedom in relation to the good as well. The good is not a value or achievement. Liberated man need not worry about it or even try to know it. To do this is to fall back into the debates from which Jesus frees us. And now they're debating, is it works or is it grace? Works, grace. Works, grace. Dirt, 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 dirt. God to auto, dude. I don't want to talk to people that think they're God or get revelations from God in their brain. This passage reflects the idea that strict laws or moral codes, while meant to guide us, can often feel like a force beyond our control, something we can't escape or overcome on our own. Here's a simplified explanation. So the law feels overwhelming. Laws and rules often seem so powerful and demanding that no matter how hard we try, we can't fully live up to them. They reveal our limitations and remind us of our inability to be perfect. Trying to escape doesn't work. Even rejecting or denying the authority of the law doesn't set us free. In fact, when people try to throw off one set of rules, they often create new ones that are just as restrictive or oppressive. For example, societies that reject one moral system often end up creating another one that's just as controlling. Jesus' approach. So Jesus doesn't get trapped in the debates about rules or obsess over what's good in a narrow, legalistic sense. Instead, he offers a different kind of freedom from constant pressure to prove ourselves by following every rule perfectly. He teaches that true freedom comes from trusting God's grace and living with love, not just checking off rules. Freedom beyond the rules. So this kind of freedom doesn't mean ignoring what's right or wrong. Instead, it means being liberated from the fear and guilt that come with trying to earn our worth by following laws. It's about living with joy and purpose, not just striving to meet impossible standards. So the law can feel like a weight that controls us. But Jesus offers a way to live free from that weight by focusing on grace and love rather than strict rule keeping. That's actually, I really like that. I like that. Good stuff. I'm going to save that in the notes. That's going in the notes. Only to the degree that we become free men are we liberated from the power of the law. Note that I do not say that the power of the law is broken and we become free men as a result. The movement is the reverse of this. The liberator frees us, and when we become free, we are freed from the power. Why this nuance? It is because the issue of our liberation is not the annulment of the law. Being freed, we enter into dialogue with God again. We reply to him. The exchange recommences. God is again the living God for us, for we are now alive again, free in Christ and through Christ. The Word can again become for us the Word of God, and our own word takes on a new seriousness when our freedom for God makes it into prayer, which is the source of every authentic human word. To the degree that the dialogue recommences, however, God retrieves the word that he gave. He makes it his own word again. He takes it away from us. He transforms it into a living commandment. It is a living commandment because it has been lived out and fulfilled by Jesus. Since the law is now the law of the life of the liberator, it is not and cannot be any longer constraint, bondage, or necessity. The commandment of the life of the liberator is living and actual, as the liberator himself rose again. Hence, the law cannot be suppressed or left behind or pushed aside. It is the law of God. It has been transformed, however, for it is now the law of liberty. We shall discuss this later. Here again we may quote Crespi. If it remains the law for Christians, this is because it is not a means of salvation, but a guide to obedience within the salvation which has already been acquired. Freedom alone recognizes and validates the law. This is why Christian obedience, which is guided and directed by the law, can have its source only in freedom, as Luther firmly established. It is because we are liberated that the law has the full value of law, and that it is absolutely valid and true and serious for us in all its details, with no cultural or spiritual attenuations. This is true, however, not because the law is anything in itself, but because it is God's law. And if God has appropriated a cultural form, it is not for us to argue with him. It is true because we are now absolutely free, and we neither hope nor expect anything from the law, nor do we attribute to it any higher meaning than it actually has. This is how the familiar transformation takes place, that the law becomes a law for us. The law ceases now to be the act that accuses us. It is not even a restrictive schoolmaster. The law is now made for man. It is set in the service of freedom. It does not judge this freedom. It no longer has any direct power over our lives. Because our freedom sees and hears the word of God in it, we take it very seriously. But even as we do so, we note a change in key. As the law of liberty, the law is never negative. It no longer diminishes or weakens. It is not a barrier or constraint. Its no exists only for alienated man who is under the powers. Only as a power is it negative and alienating. This is what Paul says in Romans 7 through 13. I had not known lust except the law had said, thou shalt not covet. But sin, taking occasion by the law, wrought in me all manner of concupiscence. Sin, that it might appear sin, worked death in me by that which was good. It is in the situation of bondage that the law is negative. The no of the law brings work of sin to light. It is the no that God pronounces on the work of the natural man. But it is such because this word has been seized by enslaved man. The Bojack. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. What would you like to say?
Well, you say Christianity is objectively proven. It's sort of, this sentence caught my attention.
Yes.
So how do you mean?
Christianity is not just like God's not just like a normal fact. God is like a whole system of interpreting facts or a system of truth. So,
but is your God any superior to any other gods, or?
Yeah, my God is the perfect attribute set.
But why do you think your God is superior to any other God that, Hindus came up, with, as Muslims came up with? Why your God is better than those other gods?
Because my God is the revealed perfect attribute set that no other God has.
And why do you think that's the truth?
Because the attribute set of God is necessary for an intelligible experience.
No, but why? What's the reason? You say it's objectively proven. What is the objective argument?
So like the evidence, like the fact that we're having this conversation, right?
But what is it? Can you spell it out for me? I'm not very smart, so can you just, explain in a simple terms?
It's like an argument. That's what I was trying to do. It's like an argument, right? And it's an argument about like.
Give me the argument, mate.
That's what I've been trying to do. Yeah.
So go ahead.
The idea is that we have competing systems of truth, and only the Christian system of truth is coherent, and your system of truth is self-defeating.
So why is yours superior?
Because the Christian system of truth can make sense of, for example, it can answer the problem of induction.
How?
Well, in the world where God creates the world and endows it with order and then reveals that he does this to us, we would have justification for induction.
But don't you think that there aren't any other scenarios where order is in place without Christian God? Maybe it's just, any other supernatural being creating world, not Christian God, right?
Sure.
Why Christian God is the answer and not any other supernatural being.
Like I said, that because the Christian God has the perfect attribute set, so it's the entire attribute.
What is the perfect attribute?
Well, we can only talk about one thing at a time, right?
No. So tell me about the perfect attribute.
Well, for example, the Christian God's triune, right? And God has to.
What is it? Sorry, go again.
The Christian God's triune, the Trinity.
What does it mean, triune?
That there's three distinct persons united in Godhead.
So how do you know that's true?
It's revealed by God.
Where?
In the Bible.
And how do you know the Bible is true?
Because if you deny the Bible, then you won't engage in a performative contradiction because you won't have a coherent.
Okay. Do you deny Quran?
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you involved in any contradiction in this respect? So Quran is the same book as Bible. I deny Quran just as much as I deny the Bible. What's wrong with me? Why should I believe the Bible any more than I should believe Quran or any other holy book? Well, what's so special about the Bible that I should believe in this holy book and not any other?
Yeah, the Quran God doesn't have a Trinitarian God, so that God can't.
No, but don't give me that. Tell me why should I believe in it? What's the historical facts or objective truth that should convince me to believe in the Bible as the holy book?
You're talking, and you're saying A is B when you're talking.
No, you say the Bible is holy. I'm asking you, why is it holy?
I'm telling you, when you're talking, you're predicating, and you would have no final reference point.
You're predicating. You're predicating the Bible is holy. That's a predication.
Okay. Well,
so I'm asking you, what is your evidence for the fact that the Bible is holy?
Well, I tried to present it, and you're not listening. So maybe when God throws you in the lake,
I'm listening to you very closely. Give me one top argument for why the Bible is holy. Your one top argument. Go.
It will be demonstrated to you on Judgment Day when God throws you in the lake.
So you don't have any argument.
Yeah. Well, if I ignore everything he says, then he doesn't have evidence. Ha ha! Got him. Ha ha! Jeez. Yeah, this is atheism. You weren't listening to anything I said, so you're kicked. On the basis of liberation, the law becomes positive. It becomes a source and spring of action, an incentive to discovery, invention, and expression. As the life of the living one, it promotes life. 1 second. Oh, shit. Yet, do we not have to say that this formulation remains the same? Do not the innumerable negative commandments remain unchanged? When we read the 10 Commandments, whether we be slave or free, we shall still read the 10 Commandments. Or we shall still read, thou shalt not unalive. And this is obviously negative. But another transformation of the law now takes place, to which Barth, Coleman, and others have drawn attention. Two senses are now possible. The commandment may certainly be read as a prohibition. This is all that is for the sinner. This is all that it is for the sinner. For alienated man, it is only negative. For the man who has been liberated in and by Christ, however, it has another meaning. It is still, of course, a limit. It is the boundary of his obedience. It delimits the circle of his freedom. But it is much more than a limit. It is also a promise. It sets before man that which God promises he shall be as free man. As the man who has entered into dialogue with God again, the negation becomes an opening. The Lord himself bears witness to this. The liberator promises that man will be set free from the law of murder, theft, and adultery. What is opened up for him is no mere possibility, that it is now possible not to unalive anymore. It goes much further. He is not just enabled to make a choice. The promise of God is that he will in effect become this free man. For this free man, a mark of alienation is the strange perversion according to which being free means being able to do wrong. To unalive is the one thing that gives a sense of being free, says Wright in The Native Son. Similarly, the Journal Devon shows that stealing means freedom. Innumerable works say the same about adultery or taking hugs. It is remarkable that modern man has this feeling of freedom when he is alienating himself from his most profound human inclinations or habits and sliding down the slope. Opposition to social stability or middle-class morality is understandable, but this is a superficial explanation for sodomy and alcoholism have always existed, and they are by no means peculiar to a moralizing age. What we really have here is obedience to determinations, and this is called freedom. In contrast, The promise is that we will be emancipated from these alienations, not because they incline us to do wrong, but because they are alienations, and moral ones at that. Thus, the prohibition that is placed in front of us becomes a permission which we can now take advantage of in the perspective of the promise which bears witness to us that the permission is not given in vain. In God's intention, the commandment is the source of life. It does not prohibit, it permits. It does not limit, it designates. It does not weaken, it supports. It reconstitutes the basis of freedom by giving a task. Thus, the commandment not to eat of the tree of the garden permits, designates, and underlies man's presence before God without the distance represented by the anguished knowledge of good and evil. God commands in order that man may use. We're going to chat GPT all this. So laws can feel restrictive at first. We're stuck in our flaws and we're alienated from God, our best selves, or our best selves. Rules like don't unalive and don't steal feel like barriers. They seem like negative commands meant to stop us from doing something. When we experience liberation, like through faith, love, or deeper connection with God, these same laws take on new meaning. They're not just rules to avoid punishment, they become promises of the kind of person we can become. For example, you shall not unalive transforms into a vision of a life where we naturally choose love and peace. That's beautiful. People think being free means breaking rules or doing forbidden things like stealing, harming others, or indulging in destructive behaviors. But this kind of freedom often leads to more alienation and unhappiness. It's not real freedom, but a form of being trapped by harmful desires. God's commandments aren't meant to limit us, but to guide us towards the life we're meant to live, one of joy, purpose, and connection. For example, when God told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree, it wasn't just about restriction. It was about giving them the freedom to live fully in harmony with Him, without the burden of guilt and alienation. Instead of seeing laws as barriers, we can see them as opportunities and supports. They help us grow into people who naturally choose good and avoid harm, not because we're forced to, but because it aligns with who we truly are when we're free. So the commandments don't exist to hold us back. They're there to help us discover real freedom by living in harmony with love, purpose, and the good life God promises us. And those horrible people want to turn it into God's mean. The imperative in this law has the same character as the prohibition. The one will of God is to free man, to place the promise before him, and to open finally the gates that are closed. But this is so only if we read the words in their proper relation. For example, their relation to the Lord who speaks them. Yeah, I understand the difference between a lecture and a debate. This is why, according to Crespi, Christ in his preaching offers us a broken law which we cannot obey, which certainly cannot save us, and which thus forces us to go back to the Savior. The absoluteness of the moral demands of Christ and their impracticality attract our attention to the fact that Christ is our Savior. Hence, this law becomes the character of our freedom, because it has ceased to be a power. Note should be taken here of the seriously mistaken view that, according to Paul, we are simply freed from the kingdom and pedagogy of the law when we live in faith, that we have passed from the state of law to that of grace. But things are not quite that simple. Can we be certain of living in faith and expressing grace in our lives? Once we diverge from the love of God, we fall back into the law, not as pagans, but still under the law in all its rigor. For when the word of God has come, it will not go away again. We cannot live as if we had not heard it. It sets us either in the freedom of faith or under the rigor of the law. How do we know we're living in the freedom of faith? Not by uneasy introspection, which will finally lead to the question whether we have faith, but by seeing that the law is indeed a thing of the past. The "I say unto you" of Jesus does not make the law harder, it expresses freedom. As law saying "thou fool" or "looking on a woman" means impossible and absurd rigorism, the point is that we are freed from ourselves, from our lust or hatred. Yet if hatred and lust are still there, this means that we are not free. We are not living by Christian freedom. But happily, the law is still present to welcome and guide us. Freedom does not take us outside the law. Hence, even though we are not free, we are still trying to do what is stated in the law. This is an act of humility of faith and the first step of freedom. Freedom says, sell all you have and give to the poor. You cannot do it? Then the merciful law tells you to give at least a dime. This will be a little act of freedom, of recognition of inability to do more, and hence of appeal to God's grace. In the Christian life, there is continual coming and going between law and faith, an advance in freedom and falling back on the law. We are not yet in the absolute and beatific state of being free. If we think we are, our condemnation is more severe. For we then make a pretext of grace and freedom to neglect the law and live on a lower level than the commandments. In freedom from the law, my wicked mind tells me I need only give a nickel instead of a dime, since the dime is shocking legalism unworthy of my spirituality. Freedom from the law opens the door to cupidity and hardness of heart, so that I can ignore the poor and cheat my employees and have no scruples about murder or divorce. What is unleashed here is animal freedom, the autonomy of sin. This common view is simply a mark of blindness, hypocrisy, delusion, stupidity, and vanity. I would rather see Christians use phylacteries. What is that? Phylacteries. Phylactery. A small leather box containing Hebrew texts. Okay. I would rather see Christians use phylacteries and keep the Sabbath in Jewish style than see them as they are, abusing grace and freedom, not even going beyond the minimal demands, living as they like. This is the height of imposture. Puritans and literalists were far more serious than we who make a comedy of freedom, a pretext of grace, a mere emotion of faith, and the crassest social conformity of the Christian life. We are fornicators in relation to the love of God, appealing to our freedom to transgress His commandments 100 times a day. There are, of course, other powers apart from the law. I do not propose to enter into the theological debate about these powers. Are they demons in the most elemental and traditional sense? Are they less precise powers, thrones and dominions, which still have existence, reality, and as one might say, objectivity of their own? Or do we simply have a disposition of man which constitutes this or that human factor of power by exalting it as such? What was said about the work of our hands? Shadows and illusions are the fruit of the sinful free decision of man, which has made the world into a power that dominates and subjects him. In this case, the powers are not objective realities which influence man from without. They exist only by the determination of man, which allows them to exist in their subjugating otherness and transcendence. Or finally, at the far end of the scale, are the powers simply a figure of speech common to the Jewish Hellenistic world, so that they merely represent cultural beliefs and have no true validity. I cannot go into these four possibilities here. I can only state my own view, which lies somewhere between the second and third interpretations. On the one side, I am fully convinced with Barth and Coleman that the New Testament exousia, what is that? Exousia, Greek ancient word in the New Testament, meaning which is debated by scholars. The authority. I'm convinced with Barth that the New Testament authority and the power of money personified as mammon correspond to authentic, if spiritual, realities which are independent of man's decision and inclination, and whose force does not reside in the man who constitutes them. Nothing I have read to the contrary has any great cogency for me. Neither the appeal to Gnosticism nor reference to the cultural background seems to me to explain the force and emphasis of the New Testament writers in this area. In particular, the opposite view has to follow the common practice of ignoring certain essential passages where Paul cannot be adequately demythologized. On the other side, however, the powers do not act simply from outside after the manner of Gnostic destiny or deus ex machina. What's deus ex machina again? Is it like the ghost in the machine? No, never mind. It's a plot device to resolve a problem. They are characterized by their relation to the concrete world of man. According to the biblical references, they find expression in human social realities in the enterprise of man. In this sense, the occasion of their intervention is human decision and action. From a non-biblical angle, K. Jaspers also discovers the reality of the powers which he calls anonymous forces that attack the very being of man, who is under threat of loss by dispersion, as non-being seems to want to annex the whole sphere of existence. Jaspers shows that one aspect of these anonymous forces is the perversion of freedom, which finds expression in confusion in the revolt of alleged truth, and in a false search for peace and justice, which produces hatred and freedom when man finds escape from himself in a generally recognizable action under the pretext of the common good. In the organization of existence, everything seems designed to free man from the necessity of being himself, which is intrinsic of him. Being oneself is a summons to be free. Man striving toward his freedom, which is in reality independence, consists in freeing himself from the necessity of being himself. It is the work of the anonymous forces which negate freedom while pretending to achieve it. To this extent, then, man does not constitute them, but he does so only because they exist in their singularity and personality. It is the fact that they act on the level of concrete reality of human life, and not just in the spiritual or moral sphere, which leads me to believe that the world of which the New Testament speaks is not just a spiritual and abstract reality, but one which is identical with what man in general calls the world, i.e., society. Imagine needing a book to teach you how to think. I can't accept Muslims, sorry. Because I'll get banned for talking to Muslims. I shall have occasion to speak about this later. For the moment, I will simply say that to me, the powers seem to be able to transform a natural, social, intellectual, or economic reality into a force which man has no ability to either resist or to control. This force ejects man from his divinely given position as governor of creation. It gives life and autonomy to institutions and structures. It attacks man both inwardly and outwardly by playing on the whole setting of human life. It finally alienates man by bringing him into the possession of objects which would not normally possess him. All this seems to me to correspond both to the situations which cause us to speak about the powers and to the description of them which is given in the different biblical passages, as, for example, when Paul says that we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but with principalities and powers. A text like this is not distinguishing between spiritual and material factors, between the powerful tendencies of our corporal being and the disincarnate powers that reside only in heavenly places. Such a dichotomy, although traditional in commentaries on Ephesians, seems to run counter to Paul's whole teaching both about the relation of soul and body and about the powers. The real point, it seems to me, is that flesh and blood are redoubtable. What? Redoubtable? Not as such, not when they are considered alone or left to themselves, but when they are seized, used, and modified by the powers. This is certainly true of what from a naturalistic angle we consider to be institutions, structures, or social forces. The Bible mentions two of these explicitly, the state and money. We have here political and economic structures or factors about which there is common agreement as regards one point, namely, that if they are viewed simply in their concrete reality and natural dimension, and at the level of their function, it is impossible to understand their power, to measure their zone of action, or to grasp their true reality. No one has ever yet been able to find the basis of political power or the reason why men are always irresistibly or irremediably obey it. Men always irresistibly and irremediably obey it. On the face of it, this obedience is completely irrational and absurd. It is out of all proportion to the reality of the power. There is no logical explanation why this power should be able to seduce men. Political power has many dimensions: social, economic, psychological, ethical, psychoanalytical, and legal. But when we have scrutinized them all, we have still not apprehended its reality. I'm not speaking hastily or lightly here, but as one who has passed most of his life in confrontation with this question in this power. We cannot say with Marx that the power is an ideological superstructure, for it is always there. The disproportion noted above leads me to the unavoidable conclusion that another power intervenes and indwells and uses political power, thus giving it a range and force that it does not have itself. The same is true of money. The question is identical. An examination of money and its functions from the naturalistic standpoint does not explain its power. If one tackles the matter from a psychological or ethical angle rather than the economic angle, it is still impossible to show why all civilizations have attributed to this measure of value a dimension, force, and attraction that we do not attribute to measure of length or volume. Nor is it easy to establish the relation between the economic function and the psychological aspect. To talk of avarice is to explain nothing, for it is simply not true that the individual thirst for gold causes whole societies to be structured in terms of money and its function. Marx was right when he stripped this question of its moral character and brought to light the mechanism of naked power. Just as he was right when he brought to light the mechanism whereby man is alienated in money, whether he has it or whether he does not. On the other hand, Marx fails to offer any explanation of the complexity of the problem. His historical analysis is not a solution. As I see it, money is what it is only because mammon indwells in it. We are not in the presence of mere economic phenomena. We are in the presence of an economic phenomenon which is quickened by a power that destroys man, that man himself does not create, and that does not issue from the heart of man. These two examples suggest others. Thus, one might ask whether technology is not also one of these powers. The answer seems to be simple enough. More difficult is the question whether the various elements in society which come under a sign of power, in the mathematical sense, correspond to the stoicheia of the world, to which Paul refers in Galatians. I hesitate to say this. There is obvious uncertainty as to the correct understanding of these stoicheia. They have to be constitutive elements, and it seems most unlikely that Paul would have fallen into the Gnostic error of thinking in terms of the material elements of the cosmos, the stars, and so forth. There are also elements of the world which can hardly be separated from society, even if it is more than this. Bondage to these elements is also at issue, and in the context they can hardly be the body. It should also be noted that the phrase comes between the end of chapter 3, which deals with distinctions between Jew and Greek, bond and free, male and female. In 5:4, which speaks of the law under which man is set when he is yet to be redeemed. In my view, this suggests that the stoicheia are in part the social structures which imprison us and in part the law, whose power we studied earlier. This link with the law seems to be clearly indicated by the parallel verse, Colossians 2:20, while Colossians 2:8, which refers to the tradition of men, might very well be referring to what we have called the social structures. If this interpretation is sound, what is the stoicheia? Should probably look that up. the length of shadows. I don't understand what it. If this interpretation is sound, the Stoicheia are elements of society or of the world. What is Stoicheia? Basic elements of the universe, fundamental principles or teachings, cosmic powers or forces. So he's referring to the cosmic powers then. Okay, yeah. If this interpretation is sound, the powers are the elements of society or of the world in general, which are transposed into force, activity, and seduction by the intervention of a power which is superior to man, but which man accepts and to which he attributes force and authority, even to the point of subjugation to it. In Colossians, Paul tells us that philosophy is based on these elements and assigns value to them. Jeez, this chapter is long as hell. Okay, so I got like 5 pages left. Oh, I can finish this before the big game. It's not proven, though. Yeah, it's proven. Lenny's correct. Among the powers from which we are freed, the system must be mentioned, not in the sense of the normal tendency to systematize, but the extended sense we find in Marx and modern structuralism. This dangerous manifestation of man leads to man's negation and proclamation of the triumph of death. It aims at a total, mechanical, and exclusive definition and explanation of the world. It pretends to offer a mechanism of history and society which is both blind and implacable. It is pure form and also final cause. We are all orientated to its realization. In modern thought, it replaces the clockmaker God. It rules out all that is living, human projects, the idea of freedom, and the shaping of history. Man's only value in it is to serve economic and social development. Things exist for it alone. They do not count in themselves. The system is a nexus of relations which exists and change apart from them. Men as well as objects merely have their functions in relation to other men or objects. The totality obeys a kind of code. Social organization, like scientific research, follows a secret plan that it cannot escape from. Since it is anonymous, man cannot change it. It negates human possibility and initiative. What man can do has no importance. He cannot affirm himself, or find himself, or even find reality. His transitory and contingent experience has significance only for superficial observers who accept wrong explanations and are content not to know. The system is the basic and abstract organization on which is played out the charade of actions and decisions. The impersonal structures everything, including the personal. My task here is not to criticize the system philosophically, which I could not do, but to show that it confronts us with a general, objective, and constant code. Possibly those who elaborate it are right. Perhaps things are like this. Perhaps it offers a better explanation than the nuances and fluctuations and pluralities of personalism. Perhaps it is more in keeping with our concrete situation. But if so, It is from this that Christ frees us, not just from the determinations, but from the system which explains them. Man's being caught in a web of coordinated necessities is one thing. His making of them into an implacable system is another. In doing this, he attaches his own view of fate to the determinations. He makes it impossible to change them. Hence, when freedom in Christ frees us from the system, this is not the same as liberation from the forces themselves. It is liberation from man's bent to create the system, to adjust himself to reality by bolting the prison door. It is liberation from the seductive power that inclines us this way. For man does not take this direction simply on his own. He feels he has to explain necessities by making them completely necessary. Christ frees us from this power, for when we are freed in Christ, we see that the system is a human theory, which leaves us with the possibility of choice. We do not have to accept the system. We have to make a judgment, not of coherence with reality, but of truth. Even if the system is coherent with reality, is it the last word on the truth of man and the truth about man? That's a good question. Even if the system is in coherence with reality, is it the last word of truth of man and about man? Freedom in Christ forces us to reject it, but this entails rejection of all systems, including specifically a Christian system. There can be no accepting a Christian philosophy or a dogmatics. These are not forbidden. Nothing is forbidden, but we must proceed with caution. Even though Barth prudently sets dogmatics in service of the church, he finds it hard to avoid a system in which principles and their consequences are organized and questions achieve their own totalism, so that Christian freedom is menaced. The reaction against Barth's system is, in my view, wrong theologically, but right as an expression of freedom. Barth's work results may be used, but the system should be rejected. Dogmatics, in spite of every precaution, cannot avoid becoming a system. But we should not let the powers use dogmatics to imprison the church. The church has constantly to engage in debate to keep the tension between individualism and ecclesiastical dogmatism. Each of these must protect the other against its peculiar dangers. The danger here is that of dogmatics becoming a system. Right. So we have to have a balance between like freedom and dogma. If we have too much freedom, then we get like free gracers, and that's goofy. But if we have too much dogma, then we get like the Catholic Church, which is also goofy in a different way. Another power which merits special attention is religion. For religion is one of the constant forces in man's alienation. As noted earlier, I fully accept the analysis of Feuerbach and Marx in this regard. This seems to me to be the point in the Old Testament struggle against false gods, with Scripture, as I see it, distinguishes from idols, since idols are a creation of man which he invests with a value and authority they do not have in themselves. On the subject of idols, Bultmann's analysis seems to me to be correct. The authors of the Old Testament, however, were not deceived. They describe idols in this way, but alongside them, and this is no mere question of their age, they also see gods who have a kind of reality of their own quite apart from human concepts. If, on the one hand, the eyes of men have to be opened so that they can see the alienation they themselves have brought about, on the other hand, external forces have to be destroyed, and the chosen people is God's instrument in this conflict, for its liberation from Egypt means its emancipation from these powers. Egypt is a symbol of these and not just a political power. Now, if in this conflict it is stressed that God is the only God and that the gods are falsehood and vanity, although this does not mean at all that they are non existent or powerless, we are hardly justified in speaking of the struggle between a true religion and a false religion. For what we have on one side is not religion at all. It is revelation and fellowship, which does not have to find incarnation in any religious form invented or elaborated by man. On the other side, we simply have a religion in its etymological and sociological sense, namely, as the bond which man has created between gods and himself, with a view to binding the gods as a bond which society needs if it is to survive, as an expression of the natural religious feeling of man, of the need which he has to draw near to a god which he himself makes, which is designed to satisfy him, and which is made according to his own measure. Now, religion shows itself to be a power to the extent that it can lay hold of its opposite, namely, the revelation of God in Christ, and constantly make it fulfill the double function of a social bond and a psychological satisfaction. Religion, in this sense, is injurious to the very reality of God, for it incites man to refute, reject, and revolt against the bond, so that when he can negate religion, he thinks he may also proclaim that God is dead. No matter whether religion takes a positive form or provokes negation, either way it offers man a fine method of avoiding true encounter with God. In this regard, it is a power because the result is not at all what man consciously or intentionally has in view. Man may be acting in good faith when he assimilates the revelation of Christ into a religion. He simply wants to put something that eludes him in its accustomed and traditional place. He does not want to destroy the work of God. This makes it all the worse. One might say that man is the victim of unconscious hypocrisy. A better way to put it, however, is that he is the victim of the religious power which possesses and dominates him. Set among the powers, and to some extent their prisoner, man is ultimately unable to break free from them himself. The reintegration of the objects by which Hegel thinks he can give man the power to escape the objects that determine him is a mere illusion. A mark of the powers is that they give these objects a quality which far exceeds all the resources of man. What shows us yet again that a power is at work is that all man's efforts to free himself lead ineluctably to new bondage. This rule holds good whenever we see man trying to work out his way of a situation. A good example is his struggle against religion. The 19th century had a grandiose idea, or came under a great illusion, that the age of religion was over. History could be described in terms of a religious period, as in Comte and Marx. But now purely rational man would break out of the fogs of the spiritual and substitute science for religion. Since Christianity has been assimilated to religion, and with good reason, for Christians had succeeded in making a religion out of it. All that was needed for man's emancipation was to get rid of Christianity. The religious spirit, however, is both tenacious and subtle. New religious forms soon begin to appear. If we grant that a religion is present when we have a group of beliefs and of practices related to the objects of those beliefs, if we note that the religious phenomena is thus defined is accompanied by a great feeling of intransigence, and that the beliefs take a concrete shape and symbols which are rallying points for believers. What is intransigence? Let's look that word up. Refusal to change one's views or to agree about something. Oh, so when you start to notice how the atheists refuse to change their views? So that denotes that they have a religious attitude. I never thought about that. I could point that out to them. So if finally the religious spirit is characterized by strong opposition to all other beliefs, then we find a whole crop of religions at the end of the 19th century and especially the 20th century. There is the religion of science. Now here we see the power of religion bringing about the same reversal as in the case of revelation. For example, the transformation into religion of something that was intended to destroy it. Oh, so the thing, science was intended to destroy religion, but it becomes a religion. And now that's why we have, Big Bang and like a million genders and climate change, doomsday. Oh, I love it when he shits on science. Oh, I love it. Ah, I can't get enough of it. Like, what pisses me off about science people is they don't own that they're like religious as hell. They act like they're superior or like non-religious, but they believe they believe in crazy miracles, like all this crazy shit science claims. White holes, black holes, dark matter, dark energy, quantum mechanic garbage. Like, dude, it's so goofy. Like, what? None of the things the Bible claims are as goofy as like the quantum mechanics garbage. But they believe, I'll believe the quantum mechanics, but I won't believe the Bible because why? Because of a stupid bias you have. Yeah, but science uses empirical evidence. Spoken like a true science religitar. Religitar. I caught myself there. What do you mean I'm not serious? I'm serious as cancer. I'm serious as a heart attack. I'm serious as a P. Diddy freak off. Science provides empirical evidence. Science can't even get off the ground without Jesus. This is not satire. This is, you know what satire? Atheism is satire. Yeah, I believe the story in Genesis. It's not satire. The only satire is when the atheists come up here and try to argue. That's satire. You're not serious at all. Of course I am. Sally, I debate people all the time. Look, it's open. Anyone come. You know why no one's coming up here and arguing with me, Sally? Because they're getting destroyed. Christianity was objectively proven by Cornelius Van Til with the Transcendental Argument for God. Because I rage quit. What? What? Say what?
Hi.
I don't kick people when they're right. Welcome, Amber.
Hi. Yeah,
Hello.
I was just wondering, do you believe Genesis is a complete and factual truth?
Yes. Are you an adult?
Yeah. Do
Excellent.
you
Yes.
believe that you were seminally present in the loins of Adam?
Do I believe what?
You were present in Adam's balls. That's
Yeah.
what the Bible says.
Yeah, I believe
You
that.
do?
Yeah, you and me are brothers in Adam.
Yeah, so
So
but like that doesn't make any sense. He was alive billions of years ago. How were you alive in his balls? Like, how does that make any sense?
you need a father in your life.
Hey, mate.
Welcome.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give you 1 point and then I'll get out of here. So let's say there's 2 different scenarios, okay? Scenario 1 is the very unlikely scenario that God is real and the Christians are right, and he comes down to earth and he says, okay, anyone who's spent their time on this earth worshiping me, spending their time in church, reading the Bible, you all get to come up to heaven. And then he looks at the people like me who didn't care about that type of stuff and, based their value off of just being a good person and helping other people. And he says, oh no, you all got to go down to hell. You're not welcome up there because, you weren't at church on Sunday. In which case, I don't want to be up there with him or any of those people if they can just do shitty things their whole life and then go to heaven for being a good person, quote unquote. You know what I'm saying? So in that scenario, I'm good either way. I either go down to hell with all of the people who just simply worked on being good. I'm cool with that. Or God cares about morals and says, yeah, you know what? I don't care that you didn't worship me. You were a good person. You did good things. Come up here and hang out. I'm good either way.
Oh, that's so edgy of you. Well, good luck in hell.
That's all you got?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pathetic. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm back now.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, well, you accepted it. Also, right, so one of the points was abortion is child sacrifice.
Yeah.
In the Bible, there's a story of a woman who has sex with a man while she's married, and then she goes to a temple, and her husband forces her to remove that baby, and God supports that decision. So why would God support an abortion of a baby?
I doubt that's the case.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm assuming that if I go look into like a Bible scholar explaining that situation, it's not going to. I'm sure you're framing it in like a stupid way.
Okay, right. Well, okay, we can ignore that one then. If science is a theistic concept, so you don't believe in science at all?
I believe in science, yeah.
So what's your issue with science?
Science can't prove science. It needs God to prove science.
Right. So can science prove God?
No.
Science can prove God.
No, it can't.
Yeah, it can. It does it time and time again.
No.
You don't want to I mean, the Big Bang is one of the biggest supporters for God.
So science doesn't make the Big Bang. The Big Bang is a joke, and science doesn't make metaphysical claims. Like, who observed the Big Bang? That's not science.
No one observed the Big Bang, but who observed God?
Not really science. The apostles, Paul.
But then, okay, but the Big Bang is like a massive supporter for God's existence.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. Most Christians believe that the God caused the Big Bang, and that's a scientific. Like, if you're gonna hate on science, at least.
Nothing in the Big Bang Theory says God exists. Science doesn't make claims like that.
No, but Christians then use the Big Bang to prove God. Like,
that's wrong.
So they're not true Christians.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I would just say their argument is wrong. They shouldn't do that.
I don't understand the hate. Like, why wouldn't you want to improve God through empirical proof, like physical proof? It's one of the best arguments for it.
Yeah, that's what I would argue. I'd say, like, so empirically, you and me are having a conversation.
Okay.
And that's only possible if there's a God.
So, do you mean as God created the human race?
There's a lot of things there's preconditions for us to have a conversation. Like the uniformity of nature is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Nature's not uniform, then you can't talk. And if you can't talk, you can't have a conversation.
So you believe in the argument of design in the world to prove God's existence?
No, I'm arguing. I would say God is like a system of truth, and so to deny God, it's like what would be the system of truth that you would replace God with? Because I don't think there's any other functional system.
What do you mean by system of truth?
Well, when we say something's true, it's true in the context of a system, like a system of truth.
Okay.
And so we have competing. I have like a Christian
So
system.
I can say anything's true.
In an atheist system, yeah, you could just say anything's true because they have no standards. So I'm
I
saying
think
that
atheisms have a lot of standards.
no, they don't have any standards. So that's why
No.
you need God, because without God, any standard would just be fake. It'd be like a fantasy standard. So unless we accept God's revelation, we don't have any objective standards to say anything's true or to say anything has value.
Okay, right. So do you support the Jewish ideals of God? So Jewish obviously believe in the same God. Any Abrahamic belief.
No.
What's your opinion?
The Jews crucified God.
As Jesus.
Yes.
But they still support and love God. So
They don't. They killed him or unalived him.
Okay. Right.
And they were always rebelling against God in the desert.
I really want to know what you mean by Christianity is objectively proven.
The worldview, the Christian worldview, is necessary. You can't deny it. So anyone denying the Christian worldview, it's a contradiction.
So what makes it, like, what's the proof of that?
Well, you wouldn't be able to prove anything without the Christian worldview because you need a worldview to prove something.
Yeah, so what proves that the Christian worldview is right?
That it's the only unique worldview that can prove things. So if you deny it.
Where have you come from this opinion? How have you, decided that's the truth?
Because I just go like, okay, so we have facts, and I go, well, what's a necessary precondition for their effect? And it's going to be the Christian God.
Well, okay, right. So then what is the evidence of that? How can you prove that to me?
Like a fact requires uniformity of nature, like I mentioned earlier.
Okay. But can you not just say evolution creates uniform nature?
No. There's no because there's no empirical proof and there's no rational proof for the uniformity of nature. So it has to be.
What do you mean there's no empirical proof? You can't see the patterns in nature.
You can see them, but you can't.
Well, that's empirical proof.
You can't justify them. No, because you can't see the future. So you have
That's got nothing to do with empiricism. Empiricism is like being able to see stuff in real person.
No. When you touch a hot stove, you think in the future when you touch a hot stove, it's going to hurt your hand, right? Because it hurt in the past, it's going to hurt in the future.
That's using rationalism. That part's the rationalism, using the thoughts.
That's God's necessary for that part.
So you believe God made us rational?
Well, you can't observe the future. So when you believe that in the future the hot stove will burn your hand, you're being irrational. That's blind faith. Unless you're a Christian and you can account for that type of reasoning.
Is it not better to make an assumption on the future so harm isn't caused than...
Well, it's better to have evidence for your position. That's why you should be a Christian.
There is evidence that my hand got burnt.
No, you're begging the question. Because you don't observe the future, and you want to make everything about...
Neither does a Christian.
No, but God does, and then God tells us that he will secure that the future resembles...
Has God talked to you before?
His word is in the Bible. It's recorded.
Yeah, but what proves that it's his word?
The fact that, when you deny it, you become a bumbling fool. You can't debate without God's word.
That's an opinion-based thing. I could say you're a bumbling fool. A lot of people on here believe that.
God's necessary for knowledge. You can't deny knowledge. If knowledge, then God. We have knowledge, therefore God.
Yeah, but there's no proof of that. We could have knowledge from anything.
The proof. No, knowledge requires identity over time, uniformity of nature, cause and effect, reliability of senses, and cognitive.
Cause and effect is literally an empirical scientific method. It has nothing to do with religion.
Science doesn't prove cause and effect. It just assumes it's true. So when you deny God, you have no reason to think.
Cause and effect is assumption.
Yeah, but God would justify it. So God could explain how we live in a world with cause and effect. God explains that. If you deny God, it doesn't make sense.
Okay, right. Fine. So you love God, you support God, right?
Right.
Why would you support a God that creates the earth unevenly? As in, why, if I lived in the Philippines, would there be multiple typhoons every year, but in the UK there's zero? Why would you support a God that treats the world so unfair?
Well, because he also made football. Go